Okay, everyone, let's get started. On time here. It's welcome to the 2021 City Council proposed budget hearing number 2. Pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
To the flag
of
of
the United States of America
America,
and to the republic for which it stands,
for which it stands,
one nation,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
liberty and justice for all.
All right, Joe. Lee, will you take a roll call for us, please?
I'm clerk. Grace is clerking the meeting tonight. We're both here, so I'll do the roll call.
Okay, go ahead, Grace.
Councilman Scaringi,
Present.
Councilwoman Restinetti,
Present.
Councilwoman Riley,
Present.
Councilwoman Friedman. She's muted. She is here. Councilman Burns.
Oh, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Present.
Okay, present.
President Burns.
Councilman Strawn,
Present.
President Scanlon.
Present.
That's all 7 here.
Okay, welcome everyone. We got a long night ahead. We got some big departments and some long stuff here, but not quite as many presenters in numbers. So hopefully it'll go relatively smoothly. One quick reminder: if you're not actively presenting or talking, if you could mute on your end, it just helps everything go smoothly. Just in case there's any background noise or whatever. So let's just get rolling. We got Chief Eggleston with us. Go ahead. I'd like to open pages 59 to 63 of our budget, and also page 199, which is the capital improvements as it relates to the fire department. Go ahead, Chief Eggleston, whenever you're ready.
Okay, this is the 2021 budget. Do you want me to go through line by line? Do you want me to just take what you have questions on? Tell me how you want me to do this.
Everybody's done it a little differently. You don't necessarily have to go line by line, but why don't you just give us some highlights from your perspective, things that maybe are different or notable, whether it's additions, vacancies, just things that to bring to our attention to be aware of. If it's something that's the same or a small item, you don't necessarily have to go every single line.
Okay. Well, it appears the biggest thing is in our personnel services. We have 4 unfunded positions, and we have 4 vacant positions through the contingency, handled through a contingency fund. Anybody, you want to talk about the personnel, or do you want me to move on, or tell me what how you want to do it?
We'll probably have a couple questions. Just do it with some questions, and we'll kind of just work through it that way, and then you can move on from there.
Okay, so the personnel is, we had 117 firemen last year. We have a budgeted for 117 this year. 3 of them are unfunded. 4 of them are unfunded, and another 4 are in a contingency fund. So that's 8 firefighters. Right now, I am short 8 firefighters today through retirements. I have another one going in December and another one going in January. We did increase the overtime budget. We'll get to that when I get to it. But I personally don't like just running a fire department on overtime. But that's one of the biggest changes in the whole budget for us this year. These and I understand these are trying times. Nobody knows about what the federal government's going to do. I totally understand that what the sales tax revenue is. I understand there are money issues everywhere.
Phil, are we going to let him finish before we ask questions? Phil, are we going to let him finish before we ask questions or ask questions?
Not necessarily. I would say for especially personal services, that's a big one. So if he's given his highlights, you have some questions on personal services, go ahead, Councilman Burns.
Okay, Chief, starting with 8 men less, let's 8 firefighters. I assume maybe there's 1 or 2 women, I don't know. But starting with 8 firefighters, public safety wise, do the men, I know that it's cheaper to add overtime because you don't have to then double up on the health expenses and all that sort of thing. But just public safety wise, is it affect us at all? Does it affect the men? Are they overworked? Do they get exhausted? I mean, what do you think of that?
It does reach a point. We were short 9 last year, and we did reach a point. You can almost see when you start calling in, if you need 3, 4, 5 firefighters a shift, and it takes you 20, 25, 30 to get that many phone calls. When there is more overtime, yes, they work a 24-hour shift. So somebody works the shift before and somebody works the shift after. If you have to do overtime on that, quite often it comes out to a 36-hour shift. I would always rather have the firefighters than to just filling in with overtime.
Phil, how do we make a motion? If I wanted to make a motion to take the 4 that are in contingency and make them active. We are paying for them already in contingency. And then when we get the money from the federal government, we then fund those ones that are unfunded. But this way, the fire department, we won't be spending any more money than already is there. And I know the police department has got 4 that's going to be in contingency, but here the fire department is going to go without 8 people, and then who knows who's going to get sick in the winter with this thing that's happening with the pandemic.
Councilman, sorry to interrupt, but one thing, I can't send them to school until the next class happens. You know, with COVID, everything has ceased training wise. It's obviously a different world than we've been in. March 13th is the next class. I believe I can get these firefighters in to start training. And
okay. So then my question then would be to Tom. Tom, our meeting before March 13th or leading up to that, could then I make a motion to take them out of contingency at that time so they could get into training by March?
Joe, this is Chuck. What we thought about doing is bringing it to you in February.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
I will come up with a timeline too, because it takes a long time to interview these candidates, put them through a physical agility class test, pass a physical from the doctor. It's a time consuming, and I interview them, and the mayor always interviews them. It does take a while to get the process of actually hiring a firefighter. And I'll work with Chuck and whatever, but I'll go back. If I have to come January 1st, I'll come January 1st, but I'll come as soon need be so we can definitely make that class.
And Chuck, the ones that listed unfunded, I thought that listed unfunded meant that the person was basically gone. So in this case, unfunded firefighters, are we saying they're unfunded, but if we get the money from the government, we will be hiring also the unfunded ones?
How I'm going to answer that, Councilman Burns, is it really depends on how much money we get. We have all kinds of issues in the city right now of things that are being cut, including fire, and a lot of different things. Depending on what kind of funds we get, that decision will be made then.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Joe, my understanding is that that the whole reason they're in contingency now is so that we can hopefully we know what the federal government's doing by then, and then it's easier to slide them right into the training or to the class in the school.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions?
Hi,
on
this
that?
is Councilwoman Friedman.
Yep.
I've got a question.
Go ahead.
Thanks. Hi, Chief Eggleston. Thanks for coming. And I said this, the first comment I made last meeting, this is my first budget meeting. So to everyone, thanks for your patience as we're learning. I just wanted to clarify one thing. So you said that there are 8 firefighters that are vacant right now, either unfunded or in contingency. And you said that you have 2 firefighters that you know for sure are retiring.
Yes,
Okay, so would that then mean that those 2 positions theoretically would just not be renewed, and then we would theoretically only have 6 firefighter positions that are vacant
Nope.
or unfunded?
no, what we did was, just to make it maybe a little simpler, our budget, we have 117 firefighters including me, in the fire department budget. Next year, we are still having 117. 4 of them are unfunded in the contingency, 4 of them are unfunded. So next year, the way I'm looking at, probably the most firefighters I'll have is 100, and I guess some of it will depend on what the federal government does. But if the world is the way I like it, hopefully, well, we'll have 117 again. Those 2 that are retiring, they're already budgeted. They're in here. They don't fall into the 8. They're not part of the 8. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense. So, so I'm just thinking, if we know, so by the end of next year, you are predicting that you'll have 115 firefighters, right?
No,
Depends on what happens with the federal government, I believe. Sorry, Chuck.
Aviva, there's 117 in the budget. We're cutting 4 out, leaving us at 113. Even if these 2 retire before the end of the year, we would hire them back next March. The money's in the budget to do that. So the least still would be is 114.
Yeah, so the 2 are already are funded and in the budget already.
Yes.
Yeah.
I see. Okay. Because I'm just thinking that it seems like, if we're short funding for 8 positions, it seems to me like, wouldn't it make sense to keep those 2, to not rehire after those 2 firefighters retire?
So then we'd be down 10, and we were already down 8, so we don't want to go down, correct?
You're correct, Phil.
Okay.
Yeah. And those are already in the budget, so those 2 are automatic. I mean, assuming he's got people to fill those, to go to the school, or if they move into town or come from I don't know if that ever happens, but.
Okay. So this is Councilwoman Riley. So at the end of the day, based upon all the numbers, we are looking at a total of 4 that are coming out of the 117, which would leave us at 113, correct?
Correct.
And we know, based upon last year's data with 109, we had an exorbitant overtime budget, which was talked about a minute ago. So our goal then would be to try to support the 4 unfunded, because there's definitely a need, so that we can go back to the 117 in its entirety with the 4 remaining in contingency. Or do we have the option of funding all of them, the 4 that were unfunded, and move the 4 out of contingency? What are our options at this time?
Ken, I do not think they can take the 4 unfunded positions out, correct?
What you're asking, can they move the money from a personnel standpoint? Can they move the money from contingency into the fire budget?
I think they can do that if they wanted to.
Yes.
The 4 unfunded positions they cannot put back into the budget, I don't believe.
The 4 contingency positions are in the budget. They just need our approval next spring to activate them.
Correct. But the 4 unfunded,
right,
cannot.
So you're asking, can council add positions in? Yes, but they have to find the money from somewhere. I mean, they have to keep that at a contingency as well.
Yes, so I
I
have
think
two.
what we should do is make note of this and then review everything. And then, we have to be a little careful because obviously there's a lot of vacancies throughout the whole budget. So I think we should make it a point, like Councilman Burns said, and I'm sure Chuck and Chief Eggleston will bring it to our attention, and we won't forget that next spring, we want to move on those 4 contingency positions. And then depending on what the federal government does, if we're able to fund all of them, as well as some other positions across the city, then we can look at it at that time. But I think we should make sure that we're on task with those 4 in contingency first, and then see where we're at, and also see where the rest of the rest of our budget presentations go. And if we find money later on or decide to move some money, then we can maybe come back to that.
Well, there's also another thing, Phil, to be thinking about, which I didn't feel I needed to share this right now, that next year we could apply for a SAFER grant for these 4 people, which would pretty much get it all funded by the federal government for X number of years. Because you have to increase your number of counts. By reducing our count to 113, we can go back up to 114 and have it funded through a SAFER grant program. We have to get the grant and stuff of that nature. So there's a lot of moving pieces here.
Right. Okay.
You guys are involved in day to day.
Let's we'll be here all night. Let's move forward, and let's just leave it for now that we want it, like I said, on task with those contingency positions. And I think it's obvious from that we are in full support of our fire department. And anything that we can do with the budget, and when the federal money comes in, then they're going to be, right up on the list to get all those positions. And quite frankly, some of the money would actually slide over from overtime if we were able to get them all in there, I would think. So
True.
some of the money's already within the budget in the overtime, because if you're talking 200 and some thousand to 700 and some thousand,
Exactly. That's where I was.
more money. That's more money than all 8 positions right now. So at least I don't know what they started in the 40s, I guess. So, I mean, I realize there might not be health and pension on the overtime, but I would think if we can slide some of that overtime into positions, if he has that many people to go, we should consider it.
So you got to remember this, for every firefighter that you hire, it costs you about $80,000 in total cost. Whereas the overtime is roughly $40,000. So on every firefighter that we do not hire, there's a savings of $40,000.
Okay.
Just don't make it clear. And someone will say, how can it be that high? The retirement cost this year for most of the firefighters is 35% of their salary. So for simplistic purposes, if someone is getting paid $100,000, we're paying $35,000 for the retirement system. It's every municipality has expensive benefits. I'm not just picking on fire because it's also police and everybody else. The new tier 6 is a lot lower, but when you're talking police and fire, you're talking over 30% retirement benefits. And then fire in specific is 35%.
Okay.
It's really sustainable, in my opinion.
So this is Councilwoman Friedman. I have a procedural question now. If there's anything that we want to change or amend, because so far we've only been, asking questions and then approving it, would we hold the page, I guess, or not? We would just need, basically how we would need 3 people to say yes and then 4 people to say no, and then the page is held if we want to figure something out further along down the line.
Yeah, we would have to vote on the page or not vote on it at all. Or if you want to make a motion right at the time, then the money has to be moved to a contingency fund and then moved out of there to another fund. So, but at this point, we already have 4 positions in contingency, so I'm not sure that we want to make any motion yet to move any of that money. But yeah, you can either make a motion to move something, or we vote down the pages, then they automatically get held.
It's Joe again. I just want to make sure that my fellow council people, when it says, unfunded, that we don't somehow, put that on the back burner, the fire department, because we had said that when we were approving the new fire station, I had asked that question, are we going to lose any firefighters? And the answer from the mayor was, no, we're not losing any firefighters. And then when I got this and it said, we're actually going to start the year down 8 firefighters, I was a little surprised. So I don't want it to get lost in the mix, that's all. Thanks.
Okay.
So for the firemen to be down 8 or 9 people is not uncommon for them. I mean, they're down over the last couple of years, they've been down as high as probably 13 to 15. Not saying because of retirements, but because of worker comp claims due to sicknesses.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with you, Joe, but remember, we're holding on potential monies from the federal government that we don't know yet. So until we get that information, but yeah, I think we're all in agreement that this would be front and center if we reconsider, funding stuff in the budget. There's no question about that. All right, for now, Chief, go ahead.
This is Councilwoman Riley again. So really with this, I know you talked about, I'm not sure if that was Chuck or Ken. We talked about how you've operated because of handicaps and workman's comp, which is different from having salary lines removed. Some things are acts of God that you may do. What does it do in terms of safety overall for us to now expect you to manage on 105 with 105 firefighters? Does it impact safety overall?
We still have the same minimum number of firemen working every day, but it just would be the workload, how much more overtime they pick up, how many more hours they're working a week.
Thank you.
Okay, Chief, why don't we keep moving on through this, or we're gonna take forever.
Okay. And again, I have numerous things on every page if you want me to hit. Paramedic training stipend is next. That's just when somebody graduates from paramedic school, for all the extra time they put in, they get $3,000 to do that. Holiday pay is contractual, out of title.
No.
Pardon? Oh. What I'll do is, how about if I list like 4 or 5 of these things, and then I'll pause, and if anybody has a question.
Yeah,
Okay.
if it's the same as last year, why don't we do a question if it's the same, somebody doesn't understand what it is. If not, why don't you hit the highlight, some of the changes.
Yep. Okay. How to go back to the paramedic training stipend, holiday pays. That's just based on the number of holidays. That's a contract issue. Out of title, that when the officer isn't there, that's a contract issue. AL leave time, firemen average 42 hours a week. So they work, so they used to get 4 extra days a year off at straight time. Now they get paid for 2 of the 24-hour shifts, and they get 2 of the 24-hour shifts off. Ambulance duty pay, that's just $2 an hour when they're riding the ambulance. I'll pause there. Anybody has any questions on them?
Hi, this is
Yeah.
Councilwoman Friedman. I was just wondering about the AL leave time, why we have expended so little of it so far this year.
They pay them at once a year. At the whatever the contract says, last week in November or something. There's a time they pay them once a year.
So that we can expect that to shoot up in a few weeks.
That will all disappear. Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Anything else on that? All right. At the end of page 59. EMT instructor pay. Those are just positions that firefighters have above and beyond. Temporary services, that was to, we paid an IT person. A firefighter was assisted with IT. and fill in for the secretary. Overtime has increased a lot. A lot of that's based on the unfunded positions. It is expensive when we pay overtime. I'll pause there. Any questions on any of that? Okay. Vehicles, furniture, nothing. Equipment, that's just annual equipment we need every year. Usually when I go through the budget here, as you can see, it was cut down 100. I try and cut all these down a little bit. Office supplies, we still need office supplies. General operating supplies. We have a whole bunch of buildings we have to clean and take care of. Vehicle parts. Vehicle parts is up a little bit from this year. We took it down last year. We are getting we just got a new fire engine last week, and I want to say thank you for that. And we have 5 new med cars that were supposed to be in February, but with COVID, everything got slowed down. So we spent a lot of money on vehicle parts this year because we were hoping to have the rig and the vehicles early in the year, but with COVID, everything slowed down, so the delivery slowed down. So I'll pause right there. That's the end of page 60. Any questions on any of those things? Okay. I'll move on to page 61. Gas, diesel, that's a fixed cost. We don't have any control over that. EMS supplies, a big one. It was a big one this year. The mayor was able to find COVID funding from other sources. So we went through a unbelievable amount of personal protective equipment, and we still are. Some of it doubled, tripled, quadrupled in price, but we still need it. And we've done pretty good. Hopefully we have a stockpile which will get us through the end of the year, I hope. Uniforms is contractual. Gas, heat, electricity. We've added a little bit to gas, heat, and electricity because we moved out of headquarters. We're in the Matco building, and we are paying for heat now and electricity that was part of City Hall last year. I'll pause right there. I'm like halfway through the page. Any questions on any of that? Okay. Next one, relocation expenses. That's temporary facility at the Matco building. Cell phones, insurance to cover the paramedics. Professional services, that's our ambulance billing company. Medical services, those are physicals. That's a contract thing. Building equipment improvement. We've gone, our buildings, our 4 outside buildings, the average age is 97 years old. We do have some old buildings that we had to put a new boiler in one of the stations this year. We have a roof issue over on Main Street, just the upkeep of the buildings. And the last one on that page, equipment repair and maintenance, our annual ladder testing, pump testing, our EMS equipment, a lot of equipment has to be maintained. Any questions on the rest of page 61? Okay. Travel and training, that was increasing because last year, to try and save money, we did not send 4 paramedic students to Broome Community College. When they go to paramedic school, they're full-time students. They're not in the fire station like half the week. So that was causing overtime. So to save overtime last year, we did not send 4 paramedic students, but we are sending them back. They're in school right now. So that was a big uptick in that. And the last one is subscriptions, dues, and membership, various state chiefs associations and fire investigators and different memberships that we have to pay for. Any questions on the last page?
Okay, thanks, Chief. And it looks like you just have one item on 199, but that looks like an income item for sale of equipment. Take some stuff to auction.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Yes, that's just an auction line that Chuck can speak on that. That's from when we've sold old fire engines or any equipment that we have at the county, it just has gone in there. Chuck, is that?
That's
Yeah,
correct. If they sell some equipment they have and they get money, we put it back into their equipment line so they can spend that on something else of equipment nature. This
Okay.
is just a placeholder. I can't remember what we have there, $10,000 or $20,000. Whatever, they only get what they get in the sale.
Right,
They get
right.
$15,000.
right. I just wanted to touch on that since we'll be approving that here in a second, so. Okay, thanks, Chief. Go ahead.
This is, sorry, this is Councilwoman Freeman. I just have a clarifying question on that. So I understand this line is a placeholder, but I am confused as to why it's saying that it would cost the city $20,000 if theoretically that would be whatever amount of money is earned from the sale of the equipment. Wouldn't it then be $0 cost to the city?
This is just a placeholder to put in there. We don't do, what ends up, the reality of what happens, Aviva, is we sell it, we get $15,000, that comes in cash. We give that to the chief to spend in one of his budget lines, his equipment line. So it is a net zero. Nobody's paying any extra money for this.
Okay, so it says in the net cost to city column, it says 20,000, but that would be, and I understand that's an arbitrarily chosen number, but in reality, that would be $0, right?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, if you take the revenue and expense together, it would be 0, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Or the proceeds, I should.
Thank you.
Okay.
Phil?
We have a motion to accept the fire department, pages 59 and
Can you hear me?
199. Yeah,
Phil,
Yes.
can you hear me?
yes,
Sorry, I had 2 questions.
go
Hey,
ahead.
Chief, how's it going?
I'm
Can you
fine
hear
if
me?
you're talking to me, Gio.
Yeah, go ahead, Chief. I'm sorry. Can you hear me, Chief?
Yes, I can.
Good. Okay. Thank you. My first question is regarding PPE. So considering we don't know what's going to be going on with COVID, and particularly due to the upcoming months, is anything being done in the fire department to stock up on PPE now, relatively speaking, while prices are lower? Because if we end up in another March, April, early May type of situation, the demand for that stuff is going to shoot the prices through the roof. Or is the department being proactive in any way, whether it's N95 masks, gloves, whatever it is, to try to stockpile that stuff up now, considering it's nothing wasted because it would be used at some point down the road anyway?
Yes, some of that does have expiration dates on it, Gio, but yes, we've been doing, since March, we've been trying to get a hold of stuff, stockpile stuff, if the county had stuff, if we could get stuff from the state. We're in a pretty good place right now. It's just straight. We couldn't buy gowns for the longest time. You know, we feel we're in a pretty good place right now. Like I say, and the mayor went and got funding from somewhere else, COVID funding, which was very helpful for us outside of our budget. So we think we're in a pretty good place right now. We want everybody to wear a mask and be careful, and hopefully we're not going to get back where we were before. But yes, we're in a pretty good place right now.
Good to hear. And second, Chief, going back to the 4 positions that are in the contingency budget, what was the date again that you said was the earliest that they could start in the training school that they need to get into?
March 13th. So we were looking to hire them March 1st. So again, I'll repeat this, but I'll come January 1st if I have to ask for, if it's available. As soon as I can, I'll work back so we don't miss this, because once that class starts, they don't start another one until like the summer. And even if a firefighter goes to the class, starts in March, it is probably August before they're actually going to be working on the line full time. It's the training process takes a long time.
No, absolutely. That makes sense. I think what might be throwing some people off, Chief, and I'm wondering if you can expand on this a little bit. So you said this twice tonight. You said, if it's available, I'll come January 1st. Can you speak specifically to what you mean by if it is available? What are you talking about?
Whenever I'm allowed the earliest to come to see you. I'm not sure. I believe I have to go to council for this contingency. I have to come and request these. I could be wrong on the procedure, but I believe that's what I have to do. I have to come to council and demonstrate to you that I need these firefighters. If anybody can speak in, I thought that was the process. It might not be.
Chief, that's the process.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, Chief. You're right about that. That is the process, and RL would be required with a majority of city council to push that forward. But my other question regarding that is, so you would be hiring these people, correct?
I would be in the hiring process. There's a psychological exam. There's just the process of me physically interviewing the people takes a while. There's the psychological exam, like you say. There's a physical exam they have to take. There is a CPAT test, which is what they have to do physically, run, go on a Stairmaster. They have to all get through it. It just isn't something. If I had to hire 5 firefighters, and I'm sorry, I should know the timeline, but it might be 5 weeks, it might be 7 weeks, it might be 3 weeks. I mean, it isn't something I can say, I'm going to hire these guys tomorrow. It's a long process. You got to mail them in so many days. Civil service has to send them letters. It's just a time-consuming process. It isn't a quick, simple thing to. If I needed 5 firemen, I could go out, hire them, and start them next week. The process of hiring 5 firemen, might take 7 weeks. And I'm just throwing that number out. But I will figure that out exactly, and I will make sure I have enough time to visit council, talk to council, and council still has to do their business. I know sometimes that takes weeks, or it might take 30 days. So I just want to be ready for the March 13th day.
Correct, and I and no, it does. I'm glad you elaborated on that, because I kind of knew the general sense of that. But the point here being that these are 4 funded positions in contingency, to which we don't know who those individuals would be yet, is what I was trying to get across.
Yes.
Thanks, Chief.
Well, thank you.
It's Joe again. If the chief was going to come in January, why not just do it now? What's the difference? Bill or Tom?
I just think there's going to be more information. I think part of this is waiting for more information to come from where things head after the election and everything else with the funding.
And Joe, this is Chuck speaking. The reason they're in contingency is there's too many unknowns. We cannot just bankrupt the city of Binghamton by hiring all these positions. I mean, part of the aspect of this whole thing, this isn't things that I really want to say, but if it comes down to the point that we're not going to get any federal aid, okay, we can't bring this fund balance down to 0. Okay, that means hard decisions have to be made. What positions are most important? Is it fire? Then what people have to be laid off from the city? These are hard decisions that have to be made, that you guys are responsible for and the administration's responsible for. And just adding that in right now, you're throwing in another $300,000 of fund balance that you don't know where we stand. That's why it's done this way. So we have a few more months to figure out where do we stand.
Right, but it's
Mr.
already
Chairman.
it's already
Right.
used.
Also remember, this is the mayor's budget. He would have to sign off on everything. So we have to, try to balance this as we go through. And I think.
Right.
Can I point out?
I appreciate that explanation, Chuck. I'm sorry. I just kind of put things a little more into perspective. I'm sorry I cut you off, Joe. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, I'm done.
Okay.
But anyway.
Can I just point out that Chuck made the point about these SAFER grants as well? And what was meant by that is if you have 100 employees right now and you get a SAFER grant, you can have 104. But if somebody retires, you have to refill that position. You always have to have at least 100 plus whatever the grant is paying for, right? It creates a guaranteed minimum. So by not funding these immediately, you give yourself a little more leeway to get a grant so that you're not changing the amount today. And that's what Chuck was explaining earlier.
Right, I'm just thinking that a grant takes time. January comes quick, but okay.
I think a lot's going to change after November 3rd, and we'll start to get some more information. They're already getting pressure for passing something now, so we'll see. Let's see what happens. All right, if everybody's okay, I'd like to move on. We're running way behind now. Do we have anybody that would motion to approve pages 59 to 63 and 199?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay, so we have Councilman Scaringi on the motion, Councilwoman Presidenti on the second, and that's approved. All right, thank you, Chief. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate everybody's questions. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Okay, do we have Chris with us? Chris Schleider?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Okay, I'd now like to open the code section of our review, pages 65, pages 91 through 92, and the fee schedule portion that just applies to code in that it falls within 202 to 209. So if you could start us, Chris, on I guess page 65, that'd be great.
Okay, so what we're looking at there is the the professional services. Those are exams that are given to different tradespeople in the city of Binghamton that want to obtain a master plumber's or a master electrician's license. We have to pay Prometrics, which is a nationally standardized examining agency, to issue and proctor the exams. The applicant in turn pays us for those exams. So although we have a $6,000 in the budget line to be able to purchase those exams, we're reimbursed by the fee that we charge the applicant. Most years we use pretty close to that amount, but every penny that we spend to order the exams, we're collecting from the plumbers and the electricians who take the tests. So that's not really a cost to the city as much as it is just a placeholder that allows us to pay for the exams in advance while we're collecting fees from the applicants. The board member services, we do have an examining board of plumbers and a board of electrical examiners, and those are anywhere from 5 to, they consist of a mix of city employees and people from the general public, whether it's an employing plumber or somebody who works in the field, and they weigh in on different issues that would come up throughout the year, namely to approve applicants, review their applications, make sure that they have the required amount of hours that they need to be able to sit in the exam. But we also review reciprocal agreements with other municipalities so that we can allow people who are licensed in Norwich or Johnson City to perform electrical or plumbing work in the city of Binghamton. So those boards meet once a month, and we pay those who are not city employees $33 for them to come in and dedicate their time to sitting in on these boards. And we have the next line is building lease and rental. We have nothing in that.
Okay. Any questions on that page, anyone? All right, why don't we go to pages 91 and 92?
Okay, so we start with the personnel, the salaries for the different inspectors. We promoted one of our code inspectors into a building inspector position. He accepted that position at a 10% decrease over what the previous building inspector was earning. So we saved $4,000 on the salary that we're paying the building inspector. It's going to be the same in 2021 as it was in 2020. There are no increases this year. We also decided to eliminate the inspector position that person held. Last year was the first time that we had 7 code inspectors in the field just doing property maintenance code. We generally run between 5 to 6 inspectors at any given time due to just hiring and then people moving on to greener pastures. And we realized that we could pretty much maintain the same level of service that we provide without filling that position. So we're saving another $33,362 on that. So all told, our budget actually will be lower in 2021 than it was in 2020 by $37,362. So we had saved a lot in personal services. Overtime, we do keep a small amount on hand in overtime. We rarely use it. It's not often that somebody would like to be paid out for their overtime. If they do log hours above and beyond what their contractual agreement states, they usually just take that as a trade with some time off in their future working weeks. Office supplies have been maintained pretty well across the board over the last few years. The things that we need just to function as an office. It's rare that we're buying furniture. It's more or less just envelopes that are printed by Broome County, printer paper, things just to keep the office running. Clothing allowance includes personal protective equipment that the officers need to perform their jobs. Boots that they purchase have to be steel toe or composite toe, slip proof. These are things that just aid in them performing their services without becoming injured on the job. And then we do also allow them to purchase outerwear, jackets or shirts with the city logo on it, so that when they arrive at a property to perform an inspection, they're recognized as an official and not just somebody showing up in plain clothes. So the uniform budget is pretty consistent, and we actually reduced it. We took out the funding for the one inspector that we've eliminated, so it's 300 plus change per person, and we've reduced it by that amount for the 2021 budget. Any questions?
Yes, this is Councilwoman Friedman. I just have a quick question. First of all, thank you for being here. And I was wondering about in the office supplies line, some of those seem to be, like, for example, the temperature guns and the PPE, that seems to be COVID related, right?
The temperature guns are actually not for taking temperatures of individuals. They're to verify or be able to provide evidence of the New York State requirement that dwelling units be heated to a minimum of 68 degrees in the wintertime. We do get complaints from time to time that their heat is either not functioning at all or malfunctioning and not maintaining that minimum temperature. So those heat guns are used to take the temperature of an apartment and make sure that the landlord is providing the state minimum. Personal protection equipment, not necessarily COVID related either. That included Tyvek suits and boot covers if we have to go into something where there's hazardous materials present. There are times where building inspectors find that somebody's been doing some demolition or remodeling where there may be asbestos or lead paint present. So those are the types of personal protection situations, the types of situations where we would need personal protection equipment.
Okay. Thanks. That makes sense. I guess I work in healthcare, so I saw that and immediately thought COVID, but yeah, that makes sense. Thank you for the clarification.
It's Joe Burns.
Hey, Joe.
All right, Joe.
The unfunded code inspector, I'm just wondering, is that, if we get the money from the federal government, is that going to be funded, or is that person gone, or what?
That position's been vacated. That inspector was brought over into the building and construction department as the building inspector. So the individual actually still works within our office in a different capacity. I would love to be able to fill his position, but we know that in times like this where the future is uncertain with regards to the city's budget, we're willing to provide the services for property maintenance with 6 inspectors rather than 7. Obviously, it would be ideal to have all 7, but we're gonna be able to go without it for now.
So you think it can be done? Okay. Thanks.
Yes. Any other questions on page 91? Okay, so moving on to 92, where the first item is the travel and training. Our inspectors are required to maintain 24 hours of in-service training, and the new hires are required to go through a 6-week basic training program. The funding was basically untouched in 2020 due to the fact that all the classes that were scheduled by the New York State Department of State Codes Division were canceled. They're all in-person classes. This year, because the state ran into that situation and wasn't sure how to provide those services in lieu of in-person training classes, they've been offering online classes for free. So that's a big savings for us this year. That's not the norm. That's a very unique situation. So we didn't spend a lot of our travel and training, but in 2019, we were just dollars away from coming to City Council and asking them to move money out of a different budget line into this one because we're just about to exceed it. So in a normal year, we use all of the allotted amount for travel and training. We just got lucky in 2020, and I imagine that'll continue on for part of 2021 until there's a way to conduct in-person classes again. The dues and memberships on the next line are different groups that we belong to, or different organizations, and by being members of those organizations, we get discounted rates for the training classes. So by being members of the Southern Tier Building Officials organization at $44 per person, we're able to save pretty much 50% of the class fee that we would normally pay for our training programs. So those actually are money well spent because that helps us to obtain the training and the classes that we need for less than we would be charged if we were not members of these groups.
This is Councilwoman Friedman. I have another question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Are the dues and memberships due at the end of the year? Is that why there has been proportionally little of that spent so far this year?
No, they're generally due in the beginning of the year, and I'm not seeing the amount expended. Yeah, so we did have a couple of the organizations that we didn't sign up for this year because we weren't going to the travel and training classes, the in-service training classes. Being that they're offered for free this year, we didn't see the need to become members of those organizations. So we didn't really spend the amount that we normally would. But you can see in 2019, out of the $911, we spent $855. and I anticipate that we will be back to spending that again once we find that those memberships will allow us to have discounts for the required training classes.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, any points on the revenue, what's in the revenue, I'm sorry, fees part of for code? Exhibit C, I guess, is, I don't know which, let's see.
Phil, we're talking about the fees.
Right. That's like if people have fines and things like that.
Well,
Yeah.
actually, we don't collect fees for fines. Those are all handled through the Unified Court District. Those don't come back to our office. The fees that we collect are for building permits.
Okay, right.
And
We are,
Phil, Chris, go through everything that you changed on this so they understand it.
okay. Do we have that page? I guess that's on the fee schedule. What we
Right.
basically,
I think it's page 206.
Yeah, I'm just getting there. Yeah, permits are on building code. Yep, 206. It's in yellow.
okay. What you can see is we currently,
205, 206 are code.
Chris, before you get into talking about each one, why don't you give them an overview of what we did different?
okay. So we currently have a pretty complex system for fee structure. It involves differentiating between residential buildings that are brand new and residential buildings that are existing. There's different fees for each category, and that seems a little bit obsolete due to the fact that we have an existing housing stock in the city of Binghamton. I think we probably see one brand new structure a year at the most. So to have two categories for residential doesn't really make sense. One of the things that I'd like to do is just put those together and say, look, you're doing work on a residential house, whether you're building a brand new house, which is very rare, or you're renovating an existing structure, which is 99.8% of what we do. The fee shouldn't be different for each of those categories, and it's confusing for the applicant to understand. And it's confusing for us. I'm looking at this and I'm thinking we have 25 to 30 different lines of fees in there, and I'm hoping to reduce this down to about 8 to 10 lines. We also have a separate fee structure for the different trades that take place, whether it's a residential renovation or a commercial job. We charge a different rate for the plumbers than we do for people who do air conditioning and heating. And then we have a different rate for electricians. And it gets pretty confusing in some of the ways that we put it together. It didn't really make sense. So what I'm trying to do is just simplify it for the applicant, simplify it for you, for city council, for the admin who processes the applications. And I just what I'm trying to do is just create two categories. You're either applying for work, a permit to do work on a residential structure or a commercial structure. It really doesn't matter if it's brand new out of the ground like 50 Front Street, or if you're doing a renovation like was done at the press building. That they're both commercial jobs, and it just really shouldn't matter if you're hanging sheetrock or running heating duct work. It should be the same fee structure for any type of work that takes place. When we hold our fees up against other municipalities within our area, we're looking at a fee structure that ranges between $7 per $1,000 spent, all the way up, and that would be like Cortland and Ithaca, all the way up to $15 or $25 per thousand, as you would see in Syracuse or Rochester. Our structure is currently set. If your project costs $20,000 or more, our fee is $750 per $1,000 spent. with a maximum. Obviously, if you're going to spend $5 million, you don't just keep paying that $750 until there's no limit. We limit it at a $25,000 fee. But for the most part, what we're currently charging is for the smaller jobs that range between $1 and $5,000. We're charging about $3 per thousand. There's a couple lines in here which I don't understand. They don't make much sense, but we're charging as low as $2.50 per $1,000 cost of construction. So what I'm trying to do is not only eliminate all the multitude of categories here and just create two categories, residential and commercial. I'm trying to get all the different fees that we have, whether you're spending $1,000 or $20,000, they should all be basically about $750 per thousand, and that would be in line with Cortland, Ithaca, Albany, Syracuse, Rochester, Oneonta. These, Elmira, they're all charging a flat, $7, $8, $9 per $1,000 spent. Nobody's charging $250 or $3 per $1,000 invested. So if you see all the highlighted yellow lines we have here, if you approve the recommended change in the fee structure, we're going to narrow that down to about 8 lines that would be very easy to understand, very straightforward, and very much in line with other municipalities performing similar services in our region.
Okay. Thank you for that. Does anybody have any other questions for Chris while we have him here?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Thank you. Hey, Chris, how are you?
Thanks.
Thanks for coming. Good. Thanks for coming down tonight. I really like the idea of attempting to aggregate this fee schedule into something that is much more ordinal and simpler to read. In the current proposed fee schedule now, just for my understanding, so are you saying that reestablishing this the way you are proposing would increase the building fees? Could you go over those numbers again, please?
Yeah, there are definitely instances where the fee would increase. Our base rate right now for a residential renovation is $15. So if you were making a repair or a bathroom remodel at the cost of $5,000, you're paying $15 for the permit. We are recommending of saying, look, really the minimum fee for any job, especially the $1 to $5,000 range, should be $35. Every other municipality does that. They'll say in Cortland and Ithaca, look, it's $8 per $1,000 invested or $1,000 of construction with a minimum of $40 or $50. And we're going below what those municipalities ask. We're saying 35 is a pretty flat rate. But at $15, if you're doing a $5,000 bathroom remodel, you're paying $3 per $1,000 invested. So it's not a lot. It's not, a big percentage of the amount that the applicant's already spending on the work. But it is more in line with what other municipalities spend. And we hear that constantly when people come in to pick up permits. They say, do you realize what other townships are charging? I mean, this sounds, out of line. When was the last time you guys changed your fees? So yeah, there's a little bit of an increase, but that doesn't mean that every job under the new fee structure would necessarily cost more. For example, the way we have the electrical permit set up right now is that you pay a base amount of $35, but then you pay $2 per device. You're talking about switches, outlets, light fixtures, and when you go into a building, as you imagine your home, how many outlets and light switches there are at $2 each. You could be looking at $300-400 for an electrical license, even though that project may have only cost $8,000. So under the new fee structure, instead of spending $300 or $400 for your electrical permit, you'll be spending $150. So that and there are occasions where it would actually be less expensive. But certainly for the entry level jobs, it's a little bit more than we currently charge for the basic fee. Once you get to the $20,000 mark, it's exactly what we charge right now. We're not changing the fee at all for projects over $20,000. We're just saying the ones that are less than 20 should be categorized basically as just residential and commercial, and those should also be pretty close to $750 per thousand with a starting point that's more than 15.
Right. No, I like the reorganization of, saying, category A, category B, residential versus commercial. My concern is that, when you take these costs in the aggregate for the homeowner, I think people reasonably understand, increases over time. I'm a little concerned if I'm understanding you correctly about, so you're saying for jobs that cost less than $20,000 on the residential side, they're going from 2 and change per thousand to 7 and change per thousand. Is that correct?
Yeah, pretty close. But when we're talking about $5,000, we're looking at a $20 increase. It's not hundreds of dollars. So nobody's going into a kitchen renovation and saying, boy, this was going to cost me $10,100, and now it's going to cost me, $10,125. It's not, so great that it would cause anybody to postpone or abandon an idea to make an improvement.
So could you?
And I know what you mean about incremental increases sound great, but the fact is this is neglected for so many years. $2.50 per $1,000 spent is archaic. I don't know when this was revisited or last when those were established, but for the services that the city provides, and all this money goes into the general fund. It doesn't come back to our department. But for the services that we provide, it seems like there should be a minimum a little bit higher than $15 for the amount of plan review and administrative work and field inspections that go into overseeing a bathroom renovation.
Right. No, I understand that, and that makes sense. So maybe if I ask this question a little differently, because I'm also wondering for, our homeowners and our constituents who are listening in or maybe listening in at some point, could you numerically talk about that $20,000 or less range more in the aggregate, or what you particularly see applied for? So, if 50% of your jobs this past year that were under $20,000, and I'm just using, random numbers here to prove the point, so the numbers are moot, but, if the average homeowner is spending $200 in addition to the total cost, is this fee structure going to raise that on average to, $275 or $300, or is it raising it to, $500 or $1,000? Because that's a big difference.
No, and you're right. It's not. In fact, a good portion of the renovations or permits that are applied for things that a house needs routinely. You'll need to replace your furnace or your water heater. You'll need to, a lot of front porches in Binghamton, need to be replaced as they start to sag, roofing work. So if you're looking at replacing a furnace, a water heater, some repairs to a front porch, these are all under $5,000. And if something is, let's say just a water heater, you're going to replace that and it's a $500 job. You currently would be paying $515, and we're saying that would increase to $535. So it's not so great that you would neglect to replace your appliances. It's just enough to balance out the amount of labor and expense that the city incurs for taking the oversight of that project. So a good portion of the work that's done, of the permits that we do, are under the $5,000 range, and this will not even at $100 or $5,000 will not double your cost or add a significant percentage, 10, 20%. So no, it's not going to make it cost prohibitive to do maintenance on properties. I think it's a palatable increase.
Right, yeah, and I appreciate that because, and I apologize if I'm sounding redundant, but the concern that I have is, if we're at around $2 and then we're saying it's going up to $7, right? That number, that statistic in and of itself is a 300% increase that does not necessarily correlate to 3 times the amount of something in a given project. And I want people to understand that that isn't parallel in that sense.
You're right. That's a very good point. We're not, although we're looking at an increase of going from 15 to 35, that's over 100% increase. This is not 100% increase of the cost of the project. The cost of construction stays relatively the same. You're looking at a very insignificant amount of increase in your cost for the permit compared to the cost of construction.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously everything, whether it's, property taxes, things related to COVID, and things like that. Again, I'm fairly certain most people will understand that costs drive up over time. We try to impact those, but, I just don't want someone thinking that I have to replace my boiler and now that $100 fee is like $850. You understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely, and that's a good point. That amount really it never really gets to that until you're well above the $20,000 point. You're not looking at hundreds of dollars until you're into spending hundreds of thousands.
Right, exactly. Okay, I apologize for belaboring that, but I just thought that was important.
No,
I appreciate it.
I'm happy to elaborate. You're right. I want to be, transparent and clear and make it understood that this is not, in any way trying to penalize the constituents. And I think that the fees are fair and reasonable when held up against fees that are existing in other municipalities. I think we've just really been pretty slow at changing and bringing our fees in line with what the market rate is in every other municipality.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Okay, if we don't have any other questions, I'd take a motion to approve pages 65, 91 through 92 and the fee portion that represents code that falls within 202 to 209.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, we have a motion by Councilman Scringy, second by Council President Scanlon, and that's approved. Do we have John with us?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep. Hi, John.
Okay, how are you?
Okay, John's got 2 different funds, so let's just start with the general fund, and let's open pages 33 through 39, 68 to 71, and the capital portion represented in the general fund for John's department on pages 199 to 200.
Okay, I'll start. This is the 2021 proposed budget for the Department of Public Works. As you look under personal services, there's really no change there. Any small increment or increases are contractually related increases. As far as small items, just like uniforms, I've reduced those, obviously reduced as far as budgetary reductions. I've also taken the travel and the dues and memberships. I've reduced both of those lines significantly. I know training is very important, but in times of these economic climate and budgetary conditions, I feel that those are areas that I have to look at this time. If you go to the City Hall plan operations, that's the same thing. Very small increases in personal services. Again, it's contracted, union-related increases. I reduced the overtime for after-hours emergency services. That's for maintenance, electrical, or any types of emergencies that have to have call-in personnel onto the site. Also looked at reducing, obviously, our building and ground supplies, obviously with remote employees access, and we're trying to do a little bit more or less with the budgetary constraints that we're under. One thing we've looked at that we've changed is the electricity. I took and looked at a 3-year average over the last couple of years, and we're looking at this year trying to drop that $5,000 here to, and that's been through controls and monitoring with smart drives and motors, et cetera, to help reduce that here at City Hall. Let's see, also, we did have an increase though in the building equipment improvement maintenance, and what that was is it's, we had to get a contract. We do contract with Siemens today, but we needed to do something in the basement with our smart drives, and we had concerns. So that's where that increase of $7,900 came from. Also, there's court improvements. They're looking for more potential space as well. Central garage. There's been a reduction there. We've got 2 vacant positions. One was through termination and one was someone left on their own. Very important positions though, especially on our second shift operations, which will be starting soon, which 2 mechanics are placed on that shift, obviously to support snow removal and refuge operations. So that's one that's going to impact us that I have concerns about. It is in contingency right now though. Obviously, the overtime I've kind of left that the same. Let's see. Also, vehicle parts, I reduced that significantly. And one of the reasons I'm looking to be able to do that, we put the transfer station, which is our refuge collection, where we used to go to the landfill 4 days a week with our trucks. We're now not doing that. We're back to a transfer station operation where we have 2 tractor trailers that take the garbage after being disposed of at the DPW. So we'll save on wear and tear as far as we've added some new trucks to that as well. That also goes into the fuel operations. We should have some fuel savings now that we're not driving those trucks to the landfill. Same thing with lubricants. Vehicle repairs, reduce that slight. Well, let me get up there. I'm sorry. There's gas and heat. We also reduced those again in all our operations. I think it's more from looking at 3-year histories of these different commodities, but also looking to try to be more consistent in making sure lights are shut off, heat points are set, and things like that. Also, we dropped the vehicle repairs, and that's for like painting or any accidents we get in. We've dropped that. We're already at 40, almost 41 this year, but those are areas we've got to look at so we can operationally be consistent. Also, again, the travel, I cut the travel there as well. I just, right at this point, the only travel I'll do or training that I can see for that is only in the diagnostics or vehicle training for our mechanics. Signals in combined shops, again, no increase there other than the little bit are also contracted and union required increases. Let's see. And really just in the general operating supplies, we reduce those numbers as well. Obviously, budgetary constraints in the COVID-19. Nothing more probably on that next page. That pretty much everything has stayed the same. We've not increased anything there. We've actually had some slight reductions. If you go in the maintenance of roads, again, this has been decreased. I have a total of 4 positions in this line. I have one HEO, which is a heavy equipment operator. I have one an MEO, which is a maintenance equipment operator, and the other are 2 street maintainers for a total of 4 positions in that area. Again, very important because this will drive our snow removal, any road work we do, milling and paving, etc. I've also been able to drop the overtime in this area by about $5,000. How I've been able to do that, when I do milling and paving operations, instead of working a 5-day, 40-hour week, through the contract, I was able to reduce this and go into 4 days, 10 hours, which when you're milling and paving, it's usually overtime occurs because you're not going to be able to do it most days in 8 hours. It's probably 9 or 10, and we've had very limited overtime, as you can see this year, relative to this. Some of that overtime has just been necessary because, you know, if there's been call-offs or whatever due to that. Construction materials, which is your cold patch for the winter season, cement and fabric are used to repair the castings on the street and any milling and paving. So we've reduced that a little bit as well. Professional services, that's the crack sealing. We have a contract. I reduced that a little bit as well. I mean, it's tough to cut some of these things, but obviously under a budgetary situation, I'm looking to reduce those items. Snow removal, always an important one. This is one that I do have concern with these vacant positions. I mean, I do have a total of 11 positions. I have 2 maintenance mechanics that are affected at this point. I have 2 MEOs, which are motor equipment operators. I have 1 heavy equipment operator and a total of 6 street maintainer positions for a total of 11 positions. One of the so obviously we've done nothing with the personal services. I mean, that's one of those unknown numbers. I mean, last year the winter was a little bit better. I think with our night shift, which is where a lot of the snow happened, we were able to control that because we have a second shift operation in place. I did want to look at increasing the temporary services to look at implementing 10 temporary employees, and it's with CD licenses. A CDL Class B is required to drive the larger vehicles. Now, the smaller ones, some of the street maintainers can drive those, but I don't. I've tried to encourage, as part of my operation this year, I've had two do it, is to the city pays for the license for these individuals, but they're not mandated. Only somebody that starts new last year would be mandated to get that license within a 6-month period. So I still have a lot of individuals that are grandfathered and chose not to get this license. I still try to work with them to encourage this, but I believe that we need to be able to protect ourselves to make sure that we have enough resources to remove the snow from the city. The salt and sand is pretty much the same. Obviously, I've got a good supply right now and should be able to start the season in pretty good shape. The only other thing is the street lighting. That's been moved into the capital line, the A9950. So that's where you'll pick up. We move that all into one area, transfer to capital fund. So if you go to page 108, that's the transfer to capital fund. That's where the DP lighting improvements are. And that's for poles, lights, electric, salters, 2 salters for the DPW to go on our Freightliner vehicles and our International. An air compressor, which is necessary. We're working on a 1980. And the compressor is required when we're doing milling and paving operations. I mean, we've really increased the number of miles we've done. We're probably close to 15 miles this year. Traffic controllers are also under here, and guardrails. I'm going to let Chuck talk to page 109, which would be the refuge fund summary, and that information following through page 113.
John, hold on one second.
Yep.
You actually did really well coming through that. Let's go real quick. Since let me open those in 1 second. Let's go back real quick to the general that covers the administration down through removal. Does anybody have any questions on that? And we can get those pages approved, and then we'll go right into the refuse. You did great though going through that. I appreciate that. I just want to make sure I want to open those pages for the refuse before we go too far into that. Does anybody have any questions on the general fund part of John's presentation?
Yes, this is Councilman Friedman.
Good evening, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good, thank you.
All right. So let me just flip back. I just had a couple of questions. The first one is about the adding the 10 temporary employees for snow removal.
Let me get,
That is on, I'm looking at page 70 right now.
yep. Okay,
And so I was just wondering, can you explain a little bit more the reasoning behind that? Is that because it's, because I'm just thinking in terms of that we have vacant positions here and then we're adding temporary positions. Could you just explain a little bit more about the reasoning behind that, please?
yes, I mean, the workforce obviously gets a lot of time off. There's a lot of call-ins from sick. There's vacations that are tied probably on any given day. There's 4 or 5. There's personal days, which technically I can't stop in a major snow removal. If somebody calls, I can't prohibit it. That's the contract that I inherited when I came here. So I don't have enough. There's a problem. Part of the problem is I have, during the days at times, I have more vehicles available to plow snow than I do personnel to drive them, because you have to have a CDL Class B license to drive the larger vehicles. Now, the smaller ones, which I have probably 6, 7, 8 of them, the street maintainers do have that ability to drive those, but I don't have enough people. And obviously I've changed the plan, which I'm working more so with the water department and others to have a larger field to support this. But I think it's important that we look at this, to have temporary employees after we've gone through our list and we don't have people that or they're sick. You're looking at this coronavirus. I think now is the time we got to have a backup plan to be able to hopefully support the services and safety of the city of Binghamton.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. I'm just thinking in terms of, we have vacant positions for people who were working full time, and then I'm just wondering how that factors in. Like, are we bringing in new people, or would these temporary positions be going to people who did work for the city and now, their jobs are maybe not going to be funded in the next year?
No, I think it's more just as like a security blanket. What we're going to look for is individuals that have plowing experience, that can drive a wing plow, that can drive larger trucks, that have actually plowed snow. I mean, not everybody can plow snow. I mean, we've gone into a training program this year for the first time that I've had pretty much every employee other than some laborers trained in-house this year, so that we'll be better equipped. But I still think that in an emergency, these people only work as we need them. So I just think it's an opportunity that should something happen, we can reach out versus just looking out the windows, figuring how we're going to get this done. And I know snow's always been an issue.
This is Councilman Tom Scanlon. Jill will remember this. I want to go back 3 or 4 years ago. Well, it's going to be 3, I think, maybe Jill, where we got caught with a major snowstorm, one of the biggest ones in the area. And we didn't have the trucks, or we didn't have the people to plow the snow. And it got so bad that they actually had state trucks coming in to plow the snow in the city. So obviously this will protect us from being caught in a situation where we're shorthanded again.
And one other thing, 4,000 of that 32,000, actually I reduced the temporary services line under the Public Works Administration. I took that out of there and I moved it over to the 5142. So actually it's more like 28,000. Any other questions on that?
Mr. Chairman.
This is Councilman Friedman again. Oh, sorry.
Okay, no.
Go ahead, Aviva.
Okay, sorry, I think I interrupted somebody. And did you say where we would be hiring the temps from? I know you said they have to have their licenses and be able to drive a plow, but do you know where is the hiring pool? How will these people
Well, we're going to have
apply?
we're going to have to advertise it because I don't truthfully know what type of pool is here. The people I would be targeting would be some maybe retired workers from the old DPW that had a good reputation, the State Department when they retired that are looking to maybe work, 10 hours a week, or, local industry where people are not working in the winter but have a CDL and have plowed snow before. There's a different bunch of pool. I really don't know what we'll get because I haven't done it. I've used this scenario though when I was in Syracuse, which we get a lot more snow, to supplement my workforce there, and I'd like to hopefully supplement it here.
There's also Broome County Highway Department workers retired
Yep.
that would apply for the position, I believe.
And are they independent contractors? Like, do they have their own insurance, or are we responsible for that?
We would be responsible for that, and they would use our vehicles, but obviously they would get trained before they would be available to operate some of our equipment.
Okay. And is that included in this, this 32,000, or you said it was closer to 28,000?
Right. You mean the insurance piece?
Yes.
I would say no.
Okay.
Aviva, we don't really have any liability insurance for stuff like that. We have the insurance on the vehicles themselves.
Yeah, the city is self-insured.
Okay. All right. Thank you for the clarification.
No problem.
Okay, does anybody have any other questions on the general fund portion of John's presentation? I'd like to take a motion to move pages 33 through 39, 68 to 71, and the capital portion in 199 and 200 for the general portion of the DPW.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, Councilman Scaringi, motion, Councilwoman Resnitti seconded, and those pages are approved. I'd like to now officially open the refuse fund portion of John's presentation for DPW, pages 109 through 125. Go ahead, John. You had talked about having Chuck share some stuff with us on 109, I believe.
Yes.
So what we'll do is we'll have John start with page 114 through 116. Then I believe most of the other pages are mine. And
Okay.
I'll walk you through after that. So
Okay.
we have to start with page 114 first.
Okay, thanks, Chuck.
Okay, 114 deals with the sanitation and refuse disposal section. Again, personal services, no increases there. There's a contingency out there for 1 MEO, that's a motor equipment operator, and 3 street maintainers. And so those became available as a result of retired, people left the area, and a termination. As far as overtime, I'm going to reduce that number by about 10,000. And how I've been able to do that is more aggressively when we have yard waste and things like that with the team. Also, we have travel reduction to and from the landfill because at the time trucks were going up there with a total of a driver and 2 laborers. So you can imagine 6 trucks a day, that this is where I'm able to pick up this. And the only time I'm hoping overtime is relative to some heavier waste collection days, around the November time period and at Christmas time. And then obviously, when we've had some call offs and stuff like that, or vacations and holidays. Also, let's see, vehicle parts, again, reducing that number. And again, that's due to this transfer station. I came before council when we started this. The transfer station basically went online here in August. So again, we're reducing vehicles going to and from the landfill. They're dumping over at 17 Broad Street, and then the garbage is put into trailers and transported up to the landfill. And that's where the vehicle parts, tires, and gasoline fuels have all been able to be reduced significantly. If you go to page 115, the repairs and maintenance, that's been able to be reduced too. And that repair line is basically just utilized for outsourced services when maybe we can't do something in-house, such as transmission work, some type of motor work, etc. The big one that we need to look at though is the tipping fee. This is something that's jumped up drastically. And it's the majority of it is in our recycling fees. When I started here, it was roughly $45 a ton. Then they increased it in January to 60. They came back and increased it in February, which I know we discussed with council. It's now $80 a ton. Bert Adams has not ruled out increases for next year. We're trying to work closely with him, Chuck and myself, about how we can help reduce that. I think it's going to be more education for city patrons relative to recyclables. What they're actually putting in there is actually what Bert Adams is saying is driving up some of the costs. So that's a tough one right now, but that has increased. And our tipping fee for the landfill right now is still at $45 a ton, which is for our trash. So those are ones that we're concerned about. Obviously, we want to go to the capital funds now on 187.
Can I ask a question about the, sorry.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's Joe Burns, John. Hi, how are you?
Joe, how are you?
Good. The recyclables, you're saying educate people on the recyclables. What was that?
Yeah, Joe, what we found out in Chuck's conversation of mine with Bert Adams is some of the things that it's driving, when I say tonnage, that, you know, how heavy these loads are that Adams is, when we drop it and then they transition them up to out of state or wherever they're taking them, is they're finding that some things are getting thrown into these recycling things that maybe really shouldn't. So, you know, we at DPW are trying to do the best we can, but I think it's going to be more of an educational thing, working with Bert Adams to find these items that are adding to these tonnages, and then basically going out on a campaign, a communication campaign, you know, with the media, et cetera, to see these will no longer be accepted. You know, they've got to do a better job, you know, making sure that they're not combined.
With the general public, so we'd have to educate the general public when they take the garbage out.
Well, as far as, yes, the recycling, what we're going to take and what we're not going to take. You know, recycling used to be profitable. Unfortunately, now it's no longer profitable. It's costing us a lot of money.
I see.
Like, Joe, give me an example. Those old plastic bags, people used to throw them in the recycling thing. That was just a detriment to trying to recycle them. It would plug up all the machines. Some of the other problems they have is people bury in garbage in the recyclables. And when we take them, we throw them into the recyclable bin. But when they get to the recycler, they have garbage to deal with, which causes all kinds of problems. So you have to figure out a way to educate the public and probably start finding them when they do things like that.
This is Councilwoman Riley.
Go ahead.
Sorry, were you done, Joe?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Hi, John. How are you?
Hi, Angela. How are you?
Good, good. So just for clarification, did the tipping fee go up in terms of the 568 we have listed here compared to what was budgeted last year?
Yes, and it went up extensively. When last year's budget came out, we were at roughly $50 a ton. Then after the budget was passed, it went up to $60 a ton. Then in February, they came back with another $20, which is what we're at $80 now. And again, Adams is saying he's not going to guarantee that won't increase from that number. So yes, it's gone up significantly in really about a year's period, or since the last budget.
Okay.
It's jumped roughly about 30, you know.
This is Councilman Scale.
Coming down to move money here before the end of the year. If you see there, we spent $551,000 year to date as of October 2nd. That does not include September. That's up and through the end of August. So we have basically 4 more months to put in there. And I'm just waiting to see what we think the final number is going to be, so we come down with 1 RL to move the total amount of money over.
Now,
This is Councilman. Go ahead.
But I'm not done
Council,
yet.
go ahead.
This is Councilwoman Riley. I'm not done yet. So
Okay.
basically, this estimate, is that because we're also seeing a greater amount of trash, as well as some of the tipping fees that may have been accounted for during the blue bag halting, or when we were taking trash without the blue bag?
Yeah, our tonnage is up extremely. I think it's like 800 in our garbage, and I can't remember the other number there. And let me see if I got that. I don't know. Let me see if I got that. I don't have the exact numbers, but it went up extensively when we accepted, all kinds of garbage and whatever to get it off the streets.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was going somewhere with the COVID.
Council Riley, are you done yet?
No, I'm not. So because
Okay.
of COVID and because we accepted because we were accepting everything, would that be eligible for any COVID reimbursement?
I don't believe so. Not through FEMA.
Okay, thank you. I'm done now, President Scanlon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council Riley. This is for John and Chuck. Aren't those tipping fees related to the fact that China was not taking any more recyclables?
That's part of it.
Yep.
That's going to be a big part of it, right?
Yeah, there's just no value in it anymore, where we used to get basically, revenue from it. Now we're paying for it.
Yeah, China used to pay for recyclables. Then they went to zero. They take them. Now they don't want to take them. So I think it's a big part of what's driving up that there's no place to put them. There's a problem. Councilman Riley, I'm all done. Thank you.
Councilman Scanlon, I'm actually talking to Bert to see if there's anything they can get money for and see if we can segregate that and at least help him out and help keep our costs lower. I mean, the rate that they're looking at possibly at next year is $110 right now.
All right. Thank you, Chuck. Thank you, John.
Thanks. If you go to page 188, that's the portion of the capital improvements. The CHIPS funding of $1.2 million, that varies year to year. It's a state government and New York State DOT program. It provides state funds to municipalities, which, like the city of Binghamton, to support our construction, repairs, and maintenance of our city streets and the paving of them. So that varies. It's usually $1.2 million, but we've gone $1.25 million. It just depends. And we, like I said, we've done quite a bit of paving and restoration work this year so far. So that's a positive. Also, the other ones are just under here. We spoke briefly about our street light improvements, traffic controllers, and the air compressor, which I said is $4 million in paving, and the 2 salters for the 2 vehicles, the International and the Freightliner. And I guess the last thing that I would speak to would be on page 199. It's our capital improvement plan. I will say there was a large number of items that we had on here originally. I met with Chuck and the mayor, and understanding the economics, COVID, and budgetary conditions, I really tried to stay focused on any just minimal procurement purchases and recommendations. So the ones that I stayed with was, I originally had 4 of the International 4x4s. They're the smaller trucks that obviously the street maintainers can use, and they get up a lot of our smaller street. I'm going to use them for tandem plowing this year. I've reduced that from 4 to 2, and 1 other plow truck, because of the age of a lot of our equipment is getting real old. I am putting in for a M2 dump truck, Freightliner, and that's also a combined salter unit. But that's pretty much what I put in for this year. I reduced probably about 5 or 6 other items.
So we can go back to page 117, Phil?
Well, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Riley, before we move.
Go ahead.
Can you tell me the longevity of the dump trucks and the small trucks you mentioned, John? About how long do they last?
Well, it depends. I've tried to come up with a process since I've been here just not quite a year. I'd say they're probably, if they're driven regularly, they're probably, if we can get 6 strong years, that's good. But what I'm trying to do is take our better vehicles and basically I've cleaned out the storage space of the DBW, and we're storing those. Obviously, they get started once a week. If we're able to do that, not put the miles on them, keep the salt beds out of the inclement weather, I think they'll go a lot longer. I think we could probably get 8 to 10 years on it. So it's just how we handle our PM, how we handle the vehicles. But I would say if you're driving them all the time, it's probably fixed 5 or 6 years. And that's just what I've seen, because that's when you start getting into a lot of repairs, and that's what we're doing now. And unfortunately, going to have to continue to do that to maintain them so they're operational when they need be.
Okay, thank you for that. Now,
Angela, another thing is having a committed maintenance program to these pieces of equipment every year, where vehicle repairs and stuff go to that. And I believe we got a pretty good mechanic supervisor that takes care of these trucks well for us.
Yeah, we got a good team there. Chuck's right, and our supervisor is very knowledgeable and has helped us to move things around and helped us to save money through auctions and stuff. So yes, we do have a good team there.
so clarify for me, either John or Chuck, because Chuck, we just talked about this earlier. Are we putting these vehicles into a bond anticipation note?
In this case, in these vehicles here, and I can't remember what the exact amount is, they are going into a band with the intention of paying them off in 5 years. So we'll have 5-year bands, and each year we'll pay 1/5 of that truck value off. So in 5 years, it's paid off. It will never go to a long-term bond.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. Thank you, John.
Okay, go back to page 117, Phil. We are right there.
Yep.
So this is a state retirement that's related to the refuse workers. We basically allocate the amount of labor that's in the refuse fund to the total overall ERS wages and allocate that amount to the refuse fund. In this case, it's $182,938. It's down a little bit because their wages are down a little bit from last year. Social Security, the same thing. We take a percentage of their total gross wages and allocate it for Social Security costs that the city's responsible for. Workers' comp is a little different for the refuse fund. A street maintainer in the refuse fund costs us about $10 per $100 as a workers' comp fee. So we calculate that and put that amount in there. It's actually down again because of less wages. You'll also see a refuse street maintenance 3 vacants and contingency. We put $27,319 into contingency. If we come back and hire these people, we'll take it out of contingency and we'll put it back into this line. Just so you guys could understand how we broke it out so you can understand it. Unemployment insurance, we do not anticipate any unemployment insurance in the refuse department. Same with disability insurance and the health insurance for the refuse is everything runs through the Teamsters Union. And these are the estimated cost of the premiums. I have some contingency in there. What the cost is for the retirees under 65, the retirees over 65, and what their contributions are. And then other employee benefits, we put a minus $25,000 into the salary adjustment line. That is every year we usually are short hiring garbage or street sanitators, street maintainers for any length of time. And I'm confident that we'll get that $25,000 back throughout the year. I reduced it from 50,000 last year because we do have those 4 vacant positions in contingency. On anticipation notes, we got budgeted $80,000. That's to pay part of the ban that I have out there on a garbage truck. and the interest associated with that. Transfer to capital fund is nothing for this year. So I think that takes care of all the expenses. If we go back.
This is Councilwoman Friedman. Can I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
Okay, I'm looking at the salary adjustments line, and I'm a little bit confused as to why we would budget for an anticipated shortage in employees. Wouldn't we just not include that? I don't understand why this line is included.
Because every year we have shortages of employees in refuse department that we cannot hire, and there's a savings every year of X amount of money due to that. So I'm budgeting for this $25,000 savings in the budget this way. I don't know which positions aren't going to be hired on a timely basis.
I have a question.
Do you have any idea why that shortage is? Why is it that we have positions that we can't hire for?
It's finding a street maintainer position, it takes some time to find them. If somebody leaves tomorrow, it may take them 5 to 6 weeks to get someone in.
Okay. So this is the only time I've seen this salary adjustments line. Why wouldn't that then go into the general fund, for example?
It does necessarily, in the end, it does, because the general fund is paying millions of dollars towards this, when you'll see that later on in one of the revenue lines. So it's $25,000 less that the general fund doesn't have to pay to it. But each fund has to have their own numbers.
Okay, I see. I mean, what you're telling me makes sense. It just seems kind of like a roundabout way of doing it, or of annotating it. I just was confused as to why.
Transparency.
Okay. I mean, listen, we're all about transparency, but this is the only time so far that we've seen a negative or an anticipated revenue from an unfilled position, I think.
Well, no, if you look at the 50,000 there from last year, we came down to you, I think, in March or April, and asked you to move that 50,000 out of there for that reason, that we had savings of over $50,000 at that time period. That's why you see the one that says the adopted budgeted minus 50,000 and the proposed budget now at 0. We did that earlier this year, that everybody at council, I think, approved that with a 7-0 vote.
Okay, all right. Thank you for the clarification.
In the general fund last year, it was $100,000, but we did not do anything this year with it because of all the money in contingency.
Chuck, I have a question.
Okay.
Bill Burns, the state retirement fund, which we pay into with these employees, I understand is tied to the stock market. The stock market has made quite a comeback, I must say, from the low COVID. I'm wondering where we stand on it. Did we break even this year on that, or did we get an increase in our payment?
Actually, for what we got to pay in December, we're actually saving a little bit of money.
Okay.
Okay, not a lot.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Burns, it's a rolling 5-year average, and they pick a date each year. So actually, this year, the date was towards the end of March when the stock market was very low. It's not a rolling average.
Thank
That makes sense?
Yes. So again, it'll be this March then when it comes up again?
I think it's the end of March.
Yes, it's the end of March.
At the end of March. That's whatever it is then, that's what gets added to the 5-year average.
Okay, thank you.
And just Joe, let me clarify something so everybody understands this. We got to make a retirement payment in December or February. By making the payment in December, you save like 10%. Those salaries are based off of April 2019 to March 2020. So whatever the salaries are and what the stock market is, that's the time period that they look at. And then you have to make them whole basically a year later.
Okay, thank you.
Aviva, is that all you had on that one? So if we go other page that we probably should do next is page 110, which is the bands that I talked about. This is just a detail on those bands. Same thing, it's due on April 17th. 80,000 and 4,000. And then we'll skip to page 111, 112. These are the revenues associated with it. Each one of these funds need to be zeroed out one way or the other, either with some type of revenue items, with fund balance, fund transfers and things of that nature. So what we have here is the first line is the public works charges. We're hopeful to get in $80,000 or $75,000 next year. This year we're up to 83,000. But that number really varies year to year. And that's like if someone leaves their garbage out on the street, DPW will send them an invoice to, for whatever the charge is for what they left out there. Refuse and garbage charges, these are from the sale of bags. We're certainly a little bit lower this year and anticipated because we didn't charge for a couple months. But we're still anticipating that number to come in about 1.15 next year. And lastly, if you look at the very bottom line, interfund transfers, this is the amount of money that the property taxes pay towards the refuse fund to pick up the garbage. So if people tell you that the bags are paying for the garbage pickup, that's wrong. Okay, they're paying for basically 1.1 million. The total cost of the garbage is 3.7 million, and 2.5 million of that is coming from taxes. And does anybody have any questions on the revenue? Okay, the next line, the unallocated insurance.
Sorry, this is Councilwoman Friedman. I apologize. I was having trouble unmuting myself. I just have a quick question. There are a couple of lines where it seems like in 2019 and in 2020, we received money, but we're expecting, or the proposed budget, we're expecting $0. For example, the interest and earnings and the unclassified, the premium on obligations. Could you shed some light on that?
Sure, the interest and earnings, interest is pretty much down to zero, as you'll see on the general fund. And with the amount of money that we're spending, we're using roughly $300,000, I think, out of their fund balance. They're not going to have a whole lot of extra cash in that fund, if any, during the year. That's why it's zero. The premium and obligations is number based off of when we sell our bands each year. Last year, we did not have a premium and obligation, so we don't have any of that to pay out next year. And unclassified is just when we get money, I don't know, for whatever reason, it comes in, that's how it gets posted. I don't anticipate that to ever be anything.
Okay, thanks.
The next page is unallocated insurance. That's the cost. The insurance fund charges back to the refuse fund for the liability insurance that they have on the vehicles. And the last one is page 113. That's the contingency lines, which is the 3 vacant positions and the total cost of each one of the ones. If we were to bring them back, we would take this amount of money for each one of the positions and put it back into the other department line. That's a good example of what you're going to see in the general fund for all the other vacant positions that we are funding in contingency when we get to the general fund. So you'll see the actual position, the FICA amount, the health insurance amount, the workers' comp, uniforms, or whatever else is retirement, or whatever other costs may be associated with a new employee. Each department may be a little bit different. So then we can go up to page 109, and this is basically everything this is a summary of everything that we've gone through with you, that you have heard us talk about. The only thing that you didn't hear us talk about is I'm using $300,000 of fund balance out of the refuse fund, which I believe is like $750,000, and maybe as high as 900.
Okay, I like that summary. I like the way that's presented. That's good. Okay, any other questions for Chuck or John on the refuse fund?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'll make a motion to move pages 109 through 112, 114 through 129, and the DPW capital line on page 199.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. All in favor of moving those pages? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, we have Councilman.
See that? I thought we had already, let's see. On the refuse, we had already approved the capital lines,
Right.
right? Were those
Yep.
separate under refuse?
Yes.
And it was pages 109 through 125, correct? That's inclusive of everything there.
Correct. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
So we had a Councilman Scringy on the motion and Council President Allen on the second. Okay, thank you, John.
Thank you, appreciate it. Have a good one.
Okay. All right, guys, we're running a little bit behind, but let's take a really quick break. If Lee and Grace are going to leave the line open so we don't get messed up like last night. So if you want to mute your own line for the couple minutes till you come back, that we'd appreciate that, because he's going to leave. He's not going to do the mute on his end. We're going to mute on our end. Okay.
Mr. Chair, I have a question, maybe just for Mr. Shaker before we move. Are you still there, Chuck?
Yes, I am, Angela. And the refuse fund balance was $975,000 at the end of last year.
970. Okay. Now, you see how we had the contingency line in the refuge with the employees and the insurance, but we didn't have that for fire. Will we be seeing that for
Yes,
refuge?
you do have it. If you go, let me give you the page number. It isn't a page. It's not by itself. It's with everybody else. It's on.
Yeah. I saw it with everyone else, but I didn't see it lumped with the fire budget like this one.
40 something.
It's not, because they're part of the general fund, the firefighters, so they're all part of A19. If you go to page 47.
Yes, I have that. I do.
Okay, so that's where it's broken out. Each one of them are in that page because they're all part of, we only have one contingency for that, where refuse has their own little contingency account, where water would, or sewer fund would, or parking ramps would.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, no problem. All right, it's 7:20. Let's come back at 7:25 sharp, take a real quick break, and we'll be right back, okay?
Chuck, that was page 47?
46.
46.
That has the contingency accounts in the general fund.
Ken, excuse me, 46 is the contingency for the fuel and utilities and just general. And then page 47 lists all the positions. There. A lot of fun, huh? See, you get the fun part. You've missed these over the last few years.
A reminder to people that if your mics are on, people can hear you.
Exactly.
Was 7:25 the return time?
I believe so. I'm here.
Okay, how are you, Gio?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I can't complain. I rushed back, so.
I'm willing to say on record, I prefer longer breaks, even though I know it takes longer, but
Yeah, me
I
too.
really don't mind.
I had
Because it,
contracts and they left, I guess, without telling me. So I went to check on them in the dark.
Joe Burns is back.
I apologize, everyone. Who do we got back here?
Here, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Councilman
And
Scanlon's
Frank.
back.
Councilman
Sophia.
Friedman here.
I'm here.
Councilwoman
Okay.
Ryan.
All right, let's roll. Grace, do you want to do a quick roll call for us for the second half here?
Yes, I can.
Thank you.
Councilman Scarinti,
Present.
Councilwoman Rossetti,
Present.
Councilwoman Riley,
Present.
Councilwoman Friedman,
Present.
Councilman Burns,
Present.
Councilman Strong,
Present.
President Scanlon,
Present.
all 7 here.
Okay, thanks, Grace. Okay, I see we got Jeff on the line, so I guess we'll get right to it. One more big section. Actually, after tonight, we've hit a lot of huge sections. So even though it's taken a little bit of time, I think we're making pretty good progress. So Jeff, I'm going to open the water fund. Let's do the water fund first, and then we'll pause and pass that, and then we'll go to the fund. So the water fund, as I see it from the agenda, is pages 139 through 161. And then there's a capital section on 199 and a fee schedule section that's included within pages 202, 209 for the water fund. So I'd like to open those pages. Jeff, I'll turn it over to you and just tell us, and then for Grace and Lee, when they're flipping the pages down there, go with the order that makes sense to you. Just let us know which page you're doing, and then we'll kind of go follow your lead on that.
All right, Jeff, why don't you start on 145?
Yep, that's what I had. Perfect, 145.
Okay.
For those of you who don't know me, which is probably most of you, I'm Jeff Kruger, Superintendent of Water and Sewer. I started the job in January. Took over for Joe Yanezi. Our proposed budget, we're going to start right now. Personal services, superintendent, administrative assistant, dispatcher, and general equipment mechanic. Those two positions we pay partial along with the sewer department for services rendered to our department. As far as the dispatcher goes, a lot of overtime calls are generated from our call outs. General equipment mechanic, we pay partial for the salary of one of the mechanics down there. No overtime budget in 8310. Equipment is basic. Accounting, collection, information, engineering, court counsel, water sewer network, communications. Those are all funds that we pay out to other departments for services rendered. Office supplies, printing and mailing, telephone, internet, fax, professional services. Professional services is a pretty big line. We did decrease it. It covers a lot. Our outside testing, all the water that we make and provide has to be tested by an independent laboratory as well as our internal laboratory. So New York State, the EPA, they have a lot of testing parameters that have to be followed each and every year. A lot of this money out of professional services goes towards that. Others go to professional contracts. We have a lot of sensitive equipment that does very specialized reading. This equipment has to be serviced by the company that manufactures it. That covers a lot of the professional services line. Office equipment lease, travel and training for 8310. That's my training line. I have to maintain my license. I have to attend X amount of classes each year to maintain the license that I hold. Dues and fees, AWWA membership, which gives us a slightly decreased price in training sessions for me and the other members of our staff. Page 147, 8330. We were able to remove one position as a water treatment plant operator. We restructured how the water treatment plant operators man this facility 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We're going from 9 to 8 operators to accomplish the task. COVID put us into a different way of doing things, trying to separate everyone. So we realized some things that we hadn't looked at before. So it gave us the ability to actually change our staffing around and go from 9 to 8 operators to fully cover all of our shifts. Overtime, the entire staff, water and sewer, has been absolutely phenomenal with controlling and helping to control this number. It's not just me saying it, it's these guys doing a little bit extra. It's these guys, not calling in that one time. It's a huge team effort, and I'm really proud of my guys for stepping up and getting overtime knocked down when we were asked to. It's a big deal to me when I see them, step up like this. Toolboxes, equipment, small stuff, generator operating supplies. A lot of our blanket POs come out of this line so that we can quickly purchase the things that we need to keep going. Lubricants, it just wasn't being used for lubricants. There was no reason to fund it. Spare parts is that. Next big line is chemicals. This includes all the chemicals it takes to treat water. It's a pretty big number. The proposed budget is going to be pretty tight because we are expecting different price hikes from multiple companies, also due to COVID and everything else and the increased costs of doing business. Uniforms is contractual, protective clothing. At the end of the year, we usually purchase, extra gloves, aprons, face shields, goggles, things like that for dealing with some of the chemicals. Clothing allowance is contractual. Gas and heat, running furnaces in multiple pump stations and this building. Electricity, something's constantly running here. These pumps, the largest pump we have is a 500 horsepower. You're dealing with a lot of electricity. The 310 proposed is going to cut it pretty tight. We're going to see how that works out. We're pretty confident about that number, but it is cutting it pretty tight. Elevator repair service is something we do. Building equipment improvement. We use our furnace contract, comes out of this, to have a local furnace company come in and do some of the service. Wastewater processing fee. This is a big one. This fund line winds up going back to the joint sewage treatment plant. When we take water out of the river, it is incredibly turbid. There's stuff in it that we have to remove. That sludge that's formed from that removal has to be dealt with. So this is where this line comes in. We send that sludge directly to the sewage treatment plant, and they work their magic on it and process it, dry it, and send it to the landfill. We are charged for that service. State permit and fees, speedies, which is a DEC permit, travel and training for the full staff. Everybody who is here has a license to treat water through New York State, and they have to maintain that license by going to X amount of courses every year. It's mandatory. 8340, Water Transit Distribution, page 149. In this budget, we were able to unfund 2 laborer positions. They weren't filled, and we didn't have an absolute need for them right now. Overtime, again, the same thing. If you look at the expended overtime number, it's pretty impressive for what it is, but we still have some colder weather, and main breaks and that such will come out of this number. We're still doing everything we can to keep it pretty low. Tools, generator, operating supplies, pretty much the same. Vehicle parts, tires, gasoline, fuel. We have a lot of equipment out there. It is getting older, so vehicle repair parts is going to cost what it's going to cost. Tires are a constant. Gasoline and fuel is what it is. Lubricants, meter repair and parts. Just some of the simplest things, the fittings that attach to the plumbing that allow you to screw a meter in place. Those are a bronze mix. They're $15 to $20 a piece. You need 2 of them for every meter in every house. We internally replace about 700 meters a year, and it keeps going. Building, grounds, and distribution. Whatever needs we have around the yard, things like that. Hydrant repair, parts to replace on the hydrant. We also scrap all the old hydrants and we'll strip them for any usable parts. Construction materials, everything we do when we dig a hole. The stone that goes back in, removal of the old dirt, blacktop, sandstone, you name it, depending on what we're putting in. Certain things have to be bedded in certain ways when we put them back in the ground. That line covers that. Uniforms is contractual, protective clothing. Again, usually at the end of the year, we'll buy some extra stuff to have it on hand. Clothing allowance, contractual. Gas, heat is taken care of out of this budget. Professional services, leak detection services. We are just getting into this acoustic finding leaks by just the sound, using a hydrophone and different devices. We're finding out it's more of an art form than an easily learned task. So we still, when we get into trouble, we still depend on outside services to provide faster and better location than we're capable of doing. We'll mirror them and try to learn from what they're doing so that we're getting better and better at this as time goes on. Equipment lease and rental. Could be a big pump, could be specialized jackhammer fitting, it could be anything on that. Equipment repairs, maintenance, dropped it down a little bit. Travel and training, same thing. All my guys in the distribution department strive for their D license, and they have required courses they must take to maintain their licensing. 151 is retirement.
Jeff, 151 through 156 are the same as what I explained in the refuse department, based off of allocation of employees' wages and things of that nature.
Okay. $158 serial bonds and principal. I'm sure Chuck has something to say about that, because I don't.
Yep, well, we'll go back to 157, Aviva. So once again, I didn't reduce any salary adjustments here. I believe Jeff's got his people cut down to the very end, and if we lose someone, we gotta really battle to find that person as soon as possible. Serial bonds and serial bond interest are long-term notes that we're obligated to make these payments based off an amortization schedule. There is one thing on both the principal and interest that you'll see on multiple funds is at the very bottom, you'll see estimated savings from refunds. This is what I think the savings are going to be on the bonds when they get finally sold, which is probably, hopefully, next week. I got a meeting tomorrow with them on this, and hopefully we get done next week. If that's the case, before this budget's approved, I would probably make an adjustment for you to possibly change these if I know they're different. And as I'm talking about these two, we did get a Moody's rating today on this, and our Moody's rating is A2 steady, which is the same as it's always been, which is surprising considering the pandemic situation. Bond anticipation notes are basically.
Excuse me, Chuck. Can you put that in perspective, what that rating means?
It's hard to really put it into a real good perspective. It's not a great rating. It's not a bad rating. It's a middle of the road. I'd say mid to upper rating for most municipalities.
Has that been consistent over the last 4 or 5 years?
It's been that way, I think, since 2015, I think.
Was it better or worse than 2015?
I can't hear you, Tom.
Was it better or worse than 2015?
I think we had one tick up in the 15 time period when we had an increase in the fund balance, but I have to go back and pull it all up just to be, I'm speaking without the facts in front of me.
Yeah, I'm curious what it was, that's all.
I'll see if I can get a history on that for you.
Thank you.
The band anticipation notes, these are bonds or bands that we've borrowed mostly to do street work related to sewer projects out there, as well as Jeff was talking about stuff that they send down, sludge that they send down to the sewage treatment plant. We're putting $6 million into this project that is going to help us send it down there every day and not have a hold during the winter months, which always cause major problems at the plant, the sewer plant. And we're going to get a $3 million grant from that. And this project should be completed next year. Correct, Jeff?
Correct.
Other long-term debt, there is none. Transfer to capital. I'll start this off and I'll let you guys ask questions if you do. We started this back in probably 2016, where most of these items, the water department and sewer department were budgeting $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 a year. Some years they would spend it all, other years they'd spend 10,000 of it and leave 30,000 to go back to fund balance. So what we elected to do back then is start transferring money to capitals and monitoring what they have each line when it comes budget and say, what do we need to add or subtract? I think it gives us a lot more flexibility and gives safety precaution when we need something, it's there. And we're not just charging people extra money to put it into a fund balance. And as we're going through the budget, Jeff can confirm this, we go through each one of these line items. What do we have there? What do we need? Can we move stuff? Do we have too much in one line and move it to something else? So we've done all that dialogue. But I don't know if anybody has any specific questions about this list of stuff. It is a lot of money, $280,000. So that takes care of the expenses. I think we can jump back to page 143 is the unallocated insurance. It's the same thing that I mentioned on the refuse fund. We allocate insurances out to the different funds. Contingency account, we do not have anything in the contingency account for them. If you go to page 141, this is all the bond issuances and when they're due to make payments. Most of them have two. Usually the first one is a principal and interest payment. The second one is strictly an interest payment. Tells you the years that the bonds went into account and when they expire. So then we can go to page 142. With 142, it's related to the revenues. The revenues, treasurer's fees are $800. It's an amount of money that we get at the end of the year when we send money. We bill some of this stuff over to the taxes, unpaid amounts. Meter water sales, this is the projection of what people are gonna pay for the use of their water. The unmetered water sales cap charge is a cap charge that we charge of $16 and up, depending on the meter size for each residential property or commercial property. They pay that same amount every quarter, just like you would do if you looked at your water bill in detail. You'll see a cap charge. If you all live in a smaller house, it's probably $16. Water sewer charges. Jeff, do you remember exactly what this is? Is this bills that you send out?
Yes.
So if you have to go and do stuff, change meters and stuff like that?
Usually construction-wise, brand new services.
Okay.
Um, Yeah, fees, anything from the fee schedule.
Interest and penalties on water. So if someone pays their water bill late, these are the fees that we collect on them or charge out, not necessarily collect. We'll collect them at some point. Interest and earnings is the amount of money we earn on the cash they have in the bank. Interest and subsidy from EFC bonds. So where you saw the EFC bonds of X amount of money, next year they're going to give us back a reduced rate of $21,000. That's part of the amortization schedule that is there. Sale of scrap materials and interfund revenues. This is money that the sewer fund pays back to the water fund for some of the services that the water fund does for the sewer fund. With all that being said, if you go to page 140, we are looking to increase the rates in the water rates for next year. This was already approved through ENA at the end of September. It will go into effect in March of 2001, basically for people that, as their water starts being used in October 1st. The water is going to, right now they're paying $34.30 for the first 1,000 cubic feet. That's going up to $35. And every 100 cubic feet after, it's going from $3.23 to $3.30. The other thing that we're changing here is this capital improvement fee. We're moving that up from a $16 quarterly or every 4 months rate to a $17 rate. Overall, to give you some ideas of what that means, someone currently, the rate increase is anywhere from 3.4 to 2.2% across the board. So someone at a minimum rate would normally be paying like $50.30. They're going to be paying $52 every 4 months. To give you a little background on the water rates, since the mayor came in, we raised the rates in 2015 from $32.80 to $34.30, and this is the second increase that we've had since 2013 related to water. And then lastly is the page 139, which is a summary of everything. And we are not using any fund balance out of the water fund to balance this year. I think we went through it all, didn't we, Jeff?
That's water.
Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, Councilman Burns, I have a question. The sludge, because we own the, well, we own part of it, the majority of the sewage treatment plant. I mean, is that a discounted price or are they, I mean?
I've tried.
Yeah.
It's, there's a structured fee that they have to pay. The equipment they use has wear and tear and maintenance. The sludge we send them doesn't help their process in any way, shape, or form. They also have to deal with it in different areas, like the digesters. I've asked for many a discounts, but the price they are charging us, I believe, to be as fair as possible, considering what they have to deal with that we send them.
So the answer to that question, and I agree with everything Jeff said, is it's a formula-based thing that was generated by an engineering firm based off of the turbidity that is in the river during the month. And the rate that they actually charge us is based off of their actual budget. So it's whatever their budget is, if that goes up, we get charged more. If it goes down, we get charged less as a dollar rate. But the turbidity has probably more effect on it than the actual dollar value. So if we have a lot of rainstorms, the river's very dark and a lot of slush coming up through there, it's more expensive for us to do this.
Okay.
Now, just so everybody's aware, we're working on one system right now that I mentioned, 6 million with another 3 million in the grant money that we got. There is a possibility we can get another grant so we don't have to send this to them in the future. Okay. That isn't in place yet, but it's something that we're looking at.
Nice. Okay, my other question would be emergency contingency money, like there's a water break in the winter, you know, do we just, how does that work?
We have money in what you approved last night in engineering things where we have water and sewer line money.
Okay.
We can draw from that if we need to.
Okay, thanks.
We send out, every year we send out a request for what we call emergency repairs. And I think it's like usually about $400,000 that when we need it.
Okay, thanks.
This is Councilwoman Riley. I have a question. So
Go
Chuck,
ahead.
you mentioned on page 158 regarding EFC bond 2000B, and once it is refinanced or sold, we will see possibly some savings from the refund. And that will then change the overall principal and interest, right?
Yes, for that bond. I just don't know the exact amount. So what I would normally do is I would put that up in that bond where the payment's 85,910. I would like to reduce that by 17,100, but I don't know that's the exact amount. So I'm just, for this year, I didn't really do this. I just made the adjustment myself, and I had to come down to you guys last month. I wanted to show it separate so you know what I'm estimating.
Okay, and so we will see this in all of the bonds. Because there were several bonds that were going up for refinancing in the last few meetings we had, but I don't recall seeing the possible savings in interest and principal on any of the other ones presented previously.
No, the other two didn't. There was one that was definitely like that. There was one that we're actually increasing the amount of the bond by like $330,000. And then the other one was an EFC bond, which they didn't give me any idea what that savings is going to be. And once they get it, they'll let me know, but there will be some savings on that other one. I just don't know. They haven't given me any idea yet.
So these changes will be before we have the final vote and the public. I mean, we'll see some changes to these lines in the budget then, correct?
If I get the numbers before Monday, I will let you know that, okay? And we may have to reopen this and then re-vote on it, but I can't guarantee you. It was supposed to be done this week, but due to COVID, everything's being pushed around, okay? So I got a meeting tomorrow with them with the hopes of this being finalized on Monday, but I'm not going to guarantee you that tonight.
Okay, but will we see other serial bonds that don't have the notation?
No.
Okay. Okay. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Did anybody have any other questions on the water fund portion of that Jeff and Chuck had I'm sorry, Jeff and Chuck have shared with us. Okay, hearing none, I'll take a motion to move pages 139 through 161. Did we talk about the capital? We talked about the capital part of that, didn't we?
You know
Or do you
what?
want
Yeah, let's do that.
Let's do that real quick so we can do that, the 199.
You have the capital and the fees.
And the fees. Yep.
So the water fund, the column, the third column over, those are all the items that I went through with you with the transfer to capitals. The one item that we didn't talk about was the backhoe. Jeff, if you want to talk about that.
Right. We're looking at buying a new backhoe, which is our main and primary means of getting to water main breaks and everything else in between. We also want to buy the icebreaker that goes with it, which is absolutely necessary come winter. We currently have 3 machines, one of which is going to go over to streets to help them out once we purchase a new one. I believe 2 of these machines are about 20 years old. The other one is about 10 years old. And they just take a beating. They're out there on the street, going through every condition there is. And it's, they only live for so long before we have to replace these things. It's a big ticket item, so we try not to do it very often. We keep these machines running as long as possible, but it's time to look at really replacing one of these aging machines.
And basically, so everyone knows, both DPW and water both had this in their budget, and we ended up having everybody talk, and DPW is going to take one of their old when the new one comes in, so it's going to answer DPW's needs at least for a few years, and also answer Jeff's needs. And we have a $5,000 placeholder there if he sells equipment. I think that's all you have in the water department for capital, right, Jeff?
Yep.
I guess you can go forward, Phil.
You touched on did you touch on all the fees and when you did the summary with the increase, the 2.2 to 3 point whatever %? Or is there any other fees that we need to touch on in the fee schedule?
What page is that on? I'll just verify it.
202 through 207.
Yeah, it's within 202 to 209. Let me see here. Clerk, fire engineering.
Okay, so if you look at the so if you go on page 208,
it's like 208, yeah, 208.
you'll see the old rates versus the new rates of what we're changing it for them, and you can see how all the meters went up by the same percentage.
Okay. Okay. All right, I think we covered it. So if there's no more questions, I'll take a motion to move 139 to 161, the capital portion of
I
199.
have a question, actually.
Go ahead.
Thank you. This is Councilman Pittman. Thanks for being here. I was just wondering about that icebreaker. You said that you use it as long as possible. Can you give me an estimate of how long and stuff before it would be retired?
No, I didn't hear much of what you said. There was a lot of distortion.
Oh, I was wondering how long backhoe / icebreaker machines last before they have to be retired.
I want to say between 10 and 15 years,
Okay.
depending on how, so you get to that point where you're just you're throwing a lot of money into it to try to keep it running.
Right, I gotcha. And I'm just asking because, it's a big ticket item that we have a ban for. Do we have any estimate of how long the bond would last for?
This would probably be a 5-year. I'd pay it off in 5 years, as long if I was here for 5 years.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Okay, any other questions on the water fund?
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman, motion to move pages 139 through 160 in line, 161, the water and sewer capital lines on 199, and the water fee schedule on 208.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, we have Councilman Scaringi on the motion and Councilwoman Riley on the second. Let's proceed to the sewer fund and wrap this up. You want to go to 160? Do you want to start at 169 on this one, Ken?
I think you want to start on 162.
I'm sorry, I apologize, everyone. I'd like to open pages 162 through 186 for the sewer fund, the capital portion of the sewer fund on 199, and the fee schedule portion of the sewer fund as well.
Just one editing note on the next page where it has page 166, revenues, it should really be pages 165 and 166. 165 was just inadvertently left out. So if everybody could add that to their schedule. We're still opening 162 to 186, just 165 was missing.
Okay. Okay. Go ahead, Jeff or Chuck.
Jeff, why don't you start on that same page that we...
Yep, same format. Page 169. G8110, personal services. Again, the portion of the dispatcher that we pay for. Accounting services through project management services are fees that we pay out for services rendered from different departments within the city. Office supplies, down to nothing. Telephone, fax, internet, pretty simple. Professional services, SCADA, communications, radio, different functionality, licensing. We have an FCC license for our radio frequency that we use to communicate from pump stations back to the plant. That goes throughout the city. That's where these fees are paid from, this line, professional services, out of the sewer line. Admin, postage is postage. We split the entire postage cost between water and sewer for the mailings that we do for billing everybody every year. Page 171, G8120, personnel services. That's a whole crew. No positions really changed this year in the budget. Any raise is contractual. Sewer overtime. Sewer department doesn't have quite as many issues with overtime. Usually it's issues at pump stations, and there's only a few select people that can really go out there and take care of a pump station issue. So that usually keeps that overtime budget fairly under control. 6,500 stayed the same from last year. For equipment, the laboratory work, there's also laboratory work that's done for sewer overflows. That has to be paid for. That's out of this contractual line. General operating supplies is what it is. Vehicle parts, we got tires, gasoline, diesel fuel. Just costs that are always going to be there. Lubricants, they utilize the line a little bit fuller than we did on the water side. Building grounds improvements. Yeah, it's what are we doing around the place? Maintenance of the building, things like that. Construction materials, same as in water. What we use to fill holes back in. A lot of cement work for repositioning castings. All that comes out of there. Their chemical line, odor control when it's necessary, and root control to clear lines when we're in the position to help someone like that. Uniforms, contractual, protective clothing throughout the year, and at the end of the year, we'll usually clean up that line to make sure we have a supply of gear going forward. Clothing allowance is what it is by contract. Gas and heat comes out of the other line. Electricity, we're talking 28 pump stations, and I think it's 11 CSOs, and that's the yearly price for all that. It takes a lot of electricity to keep water flowing, whether it be drinking or storm water, clean or other water. We got to keep it flowing. Vehicle repair stayed about the same. Equipment lease, we weren't really using it, so that's gone. Travel and training, they also maintain licensing, and they have to maintain training for wastewater collection systems. Not everyone in the department does it, but we do encourage everyone to at least attempt to do the extra courses just to have that knowledge and professional development, being as it is. Next one, 173 sewage treatment plant. That's.
Just let me talk about that.
Yep.
What this is the cost that we end up getting charged back from the sewage treatment plant for all the waste that we send down there for the year. The real number is probably about $10 million, maybe closer to 12 million, but we get money back for our local system cost, our bonds that we pay, interest and all that stuff. So our net cost is $2,150,000. Now, if you look at last year, 2019, it only was $1 million because, as some council people have heard, their budgets are always over budgeted, and the money comes back to the municipalities. So when we get that money back, which last year was $1,065,000, I send that back to the users through a fund balance transaction, which you'll see later on. But for the next year, we have to budget $2,150,000 based off of everything that we know in their budget. The next line, or next page, 174, is the cost related to the joint sewage treatment plant project. We also end up billing this back to the sewer plant when we're all said and done, but we expect this to be much smaller numbers next year compared to what they have been over the past few years. And then the state retirement is the allocation system that we talked about, Social Security, workers' comp, unemployment insurance. I do have some money in there for unemployment insurance. I know that we've had some people claiming it this year, and I don't believe it's going to be gone away before the end of the year. These are people that have left us and took a job elsewhere and are now unemployed and are collecting it, and we got to pay part of it. And then the health insurance is what we paid to the Teamsters Union, and for over 65 insurance. Serial bonds, same situation that we have a bunch of EFC bonds. These EFC bonds are all related to the joint sewage treatment plant. The bond issues are bonds related to the city type infrastructure. So we have the bonds and the interest, and you can see the estimate of what I'm estimating for refunding from the 2014 bond that we talked about before. The bond anticipation notes, the band are infrastructure work that we're doing within the city. And the 03 and 06 bands are related to the joint sewage treatment plant project, which hopefully these all go to long-term bonds next year. That we used to have a lease that's gone away. Interfund transfers are gone away, and the transfer to capital, these are the same items that we talked about in the water fund. We do the same thing with the sewer fund to assist in the pump stations. We're moving 25,000 over, castings 25,000, equipment 70,000, and CSO repair of 25,000. We can go back to page 168 is the contingency page. There's nothing in there. $167 is the unallocated insurance from the M fund of $12,000. That is down. And so we can jump into the revenue lines, which is going to be, actually, we can go, I can't read the page, I think it's 164. That's a breakout of all the bonds, when they came into play, when they expire, payment due, principal and interest that we've talked about, and the bands down below. For the revenue, we're anticipating sewer rents to be $9,995,000. The interest on late fees, we're anticipating to be $285,000, roughly the same. Interest and earnings is down a little bit. The interest and subsidy is the money we get back on the bonds we do through EFC for interest, and the benefit from refunding, same situation. These are bonds that they refund it. This is how they give us back the money. They don't necessarily reduce our payments. They give us back the funds here on the payments. That pretty much takes care of all the revenue. Now, in the sewer fund itself, we are looking to do a 6.1% increase on sewer rates to get to that $9 million. What does that mean? We're doing it a little bit different. We had an audit done by New York State, I think it was in 2017, maybe 18 time period, and they highly recommended that we do a cap fee just like we do in the water fund. And the reason for that is there's always been a declining water usage across the city of Binghamton and all other municipalities as people putting water saving devices. So by having the cap fee, it minimizes the loss on the revenue drop, or on the flow dropping. So we want to implement for the first time a cap fee in the sewer department of $20. The first 5 units is going to be $20, and each additional unit would be $7. Currently, there's no cap fee, but the first 5 units are $33. So we're dropping that 33 down to 20, but charging a $20 cap fee. The total percent increase for everybody for the sewer rate is going to be 6.1%. When you take the water and sewer rates together, the rate increases range from 4.4% to 4.8%, depending how much water you use. So although you're going to see an increase in water, you're going to see an increase in sewer. The sewer may be 6.1. The net increase to everybody is going to be roughly 4.4 to 4.8%. I have some numbers here if I can pull up my computer again. It shut down on me. I was talking. I believe every 4 months, I think you're looking at something like a $10 increase, but I'm not 100% positive of that. Well, I'm pulling that. Actually, I do have it. So on an annual basis, someone that's using 10 units is gonna see a $17 total increase in their water and sewer bills. Someone that's using 40 gallons, or 40 units, which is a significant amount, and usually not just a family, would see a $59 increase in their rates. So the total increase is, as I was saying, goes in those percentages for a combined water and sewer rate increase.
Chuck, what was that first one? Sorry.
Say that again?
What was the first increase? What was the first percentage you gave on the lower one?
The total, when you look at both water and sewer, Joe, combined, okay, the increase is gonna go from 4.4%, I got the actual numbers in front of me, to as high as 4.9. Most of them are in the 4.8% range.
Okay, thanks.
This is Councilwoman Riley. So you're saying the net increase is 4.4 to 4.9. How is that derived if the sewer was 6.1% overall?
I'll give you an example, and I got this broken down by unit. So someone that's in a 10 cubic units every 4 months, their combined water and sewer rate right now would be $116.30. Next year, that would be $122, or $5.70 more every 4 months. And that correlates to a 4.9% increase.
Oh, but that varies based upon, again, the season and what have you, just like you talked about. So for the people that may be watching, what does a unit correlate to in terms, is it a gallon? What is a unit?
Jeff, you want to explain that one a little bit better?
A unit is 748 gallons. So 100 units would be 7,480 gallons.
One more question though, and I know you're going to talk about this later, but you said because of the rebate from the joint sewage treatment, we would see very little change in terms of rate. But based upon what you just shared, there's still that 6.1% increase. Correct, Chuck? Or did I misinterpret something?
I think you misinterpret that. What I'm saying is out of that $2.1 million, we usually get $1 million back. Okay, and we send that back as appropriated fund balance. I'm still budgeting for that $2.1 million.
Okay, so we may see a decrease in this projected 6.1% increase.
I don't believe you're going to see a decrease in it. Okay, if you go to page 162, without this using this $1 million, rates probably would have gone up a little bit more. So if you look at page 162, you can see the appropriated fund balance of $1,065,000. Had I not put that money in there as using it that we got back, then I would have had to find another $1 million in revenue cost. Do you follow me there, Angela?
Yes.
Hopefully what happens is the sewer plant budget becomes more and more tighter, which is going to reduce that $2.1 million that we're budgeting, and we can bring that down to maybe 1.5. Okay, and we won't be getting as much rebates, but we wouldn't be having as much expenses either.
And our total rebate though was 1.6, right?
Not 1.6, $1,065,292.
Okay. So just as you have it here on the document.
Yes, yep.
Thanks.
This is Councilwoman Friedman. Councilwoman Riley, are you finished?
Yes, thank you, Councilwoman.
No problem. So I just want to clarify what this increase would look like, because I'm just a little bit confused. This is a Chuck, the example that you gave, a $59 increase for someone who's using 40 units. That's annually or per month? What is the rate? Like, what does that translate to for?
Let me give that to you. This is annually, so someone that uses 40 cubic units every 4 quarters, okay, or 120 cubic units a year, they would pay in a water and sewer bill annually, they would pay $1,233.60 today. Next year, they're going to pay $1,293, or an increase of $59.40, which is a 4.82% increase.
Okay, I see. So I apologize. So functionally, it's a 4.8% increase, and then where does that 6.1% increase fit in?
That's just because you have a water fund and a sewer fund, the increase in the sewer fund side of the invoice is 6.1%. The increase on the water side is, I can't remember the exact numbers, 2.2 to 2.8% or something, 2.2 to 3.4%.
Okay, so that's combined.
When you get your bill, you don't get a bill from the water fund and a bill from the sewer fund. You get one combined bill. That one combined bill is going to look like roughly a 4.8% increase.
Okay, I understand. All right, thank you. I'm wondering if we can ask questions about the other pages. There were a bunch of pages that were read all at once. Can we go back and ask questions about other pages that were read?
Yes.
Okay, let's see. I marked a couple. There are some, let's see, on page 169, there were a few lines that that had a significant increase or decrease. And I was wondering if you could just shed a little bit more light on what sparked the changes in those lines.
Well, let me talk about a couple of them. The project management services, which is the biggest one, that's related. That's related to the joint sewage treatment plant project, and Ron Lake is basically charged back to this line, and his time is going to diminish greatly next year. We'll probably need him around a little bit, but that was a number that we've estimated that to be.
Okay, I figured that's what that was, but I just wanted to clarify.
I don't know if any of the other ones are really that big. They're in and out $1,000 or $2,000 depending on. It's a formula base that we have. What are the wages of each department and what percentage they supply to the different areas? But that was the big one, was the project management services.
Right. Okay. And the other one that I had a question about was on page 178, the unemployment insurance.
Yes.
I'm wondering why we have money budgeted here for this year, but we haven't in 2020 or 2019.
We don't usually get any unemployment insurance charges, to be honest with you. We get very little. But what's happened with COVID, and I have not paid the bills this year. I paid one bill. I have other ones out there. We're trying to argue them because I'll give you an example. An individual that worked in my department left last year, took another job, but got laid off this year. And now he's we're being charged unemployment for them. I know that's the law. I know we're gonna get stuck arguing and losing, but that's the way things work. And we have somebody in the sewer fund that's in the same situation.
Okay, so that's pretty much purely COVID related.
Yes, yes.
Okay. All right, thank you, Chuck.
Yep. Phil, we need anybody else have any questions?
Councilman Strawn, you are muted, I believe.
Sorry, everybody. My chair was squeaking pretty good when I was kind of sitting back a little bit, trying to stretch my back. I know you covered the fee part pretty exclusively. Did we specifically just touch real quick on under the fee schedule, just to make sure we got all that so we can move these pages?
Yeah. Hey, Gio, are you awake out there?
Very much so. Did you need something?
No, I hadn't heard yet. I was surprised, to be honest with you.
I reviewed ahead of time.
So we're looking at page 209, and you can
Yep.
see the old rates at 33 and 660, and the new rates that we're doing, and the cap fees for each size meter.
Okay. Did we touch specifically, just real quick, on 199 for the sewer part, those 4 items there that are under the capital? Castings, equipment, CSO repair, and the pump stations?
These are all the ones that we talked on that were in the G9950 ones.
Okay.
We got a $5,000 placeholder if he sells equipment to go in to be able to buy it out of his equipment line. And that's all the sewer fund has outside of what Ray talked about yesterday. I think there's a pretty big chunk in the sewer lines for next year of about $1.2 million.
Okay. Okay. Does anybody have any other questions for Jeff or Chuck? Okay, I think we made it. Can we have a
Move pages 162 through 186, sewer capital lines on 199 and fees on 208.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, we had Councilman Scaringi on the motion and Councilwoman Resnedy on the second. Okay, everyone, I think we made it. Go ahead.
We do need a motion to adjourn the meeting, according to Ken.
Okay, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, we got a motion from
Okay.
Councilman Burns.
Second.
I don't know if it needs a second, but if it does, I second.
Okay, we got second from President Scanlon.